some dip. Okie dokie.
What we do here.
Seems to be on the broken side. Oh. It's open. That's good. Oh, here we go. Two stuff. Oh, music. And you have music now. And then we do a ministry. There's one ministry to it. Okay, let's just get started. Start moving my stuff around. Keep it away.
You did yesterday?
Beautiful. I have to look at this list. It's probably going to be adding there's outside stuff to the back now. God, this thing is absolutely massive. Keyboard, computer. It should. I checked the center of gravity just because of how center of gravity works. Sometimes the center of gravity is on this side. It'll go like that. So, I'm make sure the middle line is on a good amount away from my desk. It's that this much away. This much. So you got like side of this guy. That's good. It's a decent amount of space. Now either going to be doing either going to be finishing 3/4 or half of it today. But here is the next box. This is 6 right here. That trash bag. My chair. We got like 10 bags today. With like 16. Maybe 16. I missed a bag like today. Okay. I know the instructions are dense. Last time. Actually, I should get music going. Oh. Hurry up. I got some music to play. Go. Turn down a little bit. Yeah, I guess we want to back sit. I have to organize all these now, just because there's so many.
Not at 8. Nine, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, 129, 130, 131, 132, 133, 134, 1
6 times. Shit, that's like really loud. Fuck. Could y'all even hear what I was saying? There we go. That's more like it. Okay, let's get going. God, look how thick this one is. Bag 6, yep, it finishes it. Okay, 6, 7, 8, and 9 do the everything on top, and then the rest do like the Colosseum parts. Okay, here we are. I gotta get this a nice spot. Most important piece. Oh shit, I did something wrong. Time to undo that piece. God, I like this song a lot. Okay, let's get going. Yeah. 1/3. 6, 6. 4. Oh, I forgot to turn the light on. My bad. There we go. Now I got some lighting. Oh yeah. When do we flip it? Do we not flip it? Is that... Oh, it's just gonna be a pain. Okay. I just on this side. Stick. Go. Get. Oh no. Feet dexterity for the win. There we go. Actually, you know what? Let me go over to here. Oop. DD. Oh, did I mess something up? No, I did not. Oop. Get my threes. I need to put like a weight on like this fucking page. It's like coming up a lot. Move this up a little bit. There we go. That's better. I can see what's going on in the page a bit better. Maybe it's just my shitty posture, I don't know. Eh. Three. Oop. Reset. Wait, what? Why did I? There we go. I like this song a lot. It's a good song. Abnormal. Usually these are on separate sides. These ones, it's like a one 1x4, and one and then one 2x4. They usually alternate like this. So wait, like this. This is the 1x4. This one's the 2x4, and usually this one goes there, but instead it goes here. I'm actually gonna flip it because I want it to like mirror everything else. So this is like one of the only times I've ever done this, but I'm going against the instructions just because I want this to seem more normal. Actually, it looks better. I guess they did it right. Nice, you're smart. You know. 2x4. I mean, 4x4. Wait, those are 1x3s. My bad. Feet dexterity go. I'm blinking and I can see myself blinking the thing that I have up there. It's kind of fun. Nice. Where'd it go? What the fuck? There it is. I got new pants, but these ones aren't like as fluffy. Inside feels really nice. These ones aren't as fluffy, so it doesn't catch like falling Lego pieces as well as my other pants. Bum 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 bum. There it is. My piece. I swear I have it on random, but this is technically random. It's funny because random doesn't seem as random as artificial random. That's what Apple did for their music shuffle. They have it where like they keeps multiple artists from the same artist with multiple songs to stop like repeating the same song or whatever. Even though what they're doing is random, it doesn't feel random. Doesn't feel random enough. That's weird. Oh, who would have thought? I'm on this side. Wow. It went on really easily. Did you guys understand what I just said? It went on really easily. There you go. Oh, the wrong piece. My bad. Interesting. Anyways. Printer. No. I want some more seat. Am I myself my only viewer? It'd be kind of sad. Playlists.
Humanity has broadened their search of the skies for other civilizations by adding ears as well as eyes in the form of radio telescopes. We've been tuning in to our skies for almost a century, listening for extraterrestrial signals, transmissions, and oddities that may result in a key breakthrough in humanity's ongoing quest to find alien life in the Milky Way. Over the decades, a few strange anomalies have been a cause for some speculation. 1977's discovery of the WOW signal led many to conclude that we may have intercepted a transmission from a faint and distant intelligent civilization, but with no repeats of the signal despite global ongoing efforts claims of proof of alien life started to wear as thin as that faint flash of radio energy all those years ago. Every unexplained discovery, strange transmission, and oddity always seems to end up being nothing more than an error or can be explained by a naturally occurring phenomenon. We've been scanning the skies rigorously, and yet we've never even come close to concrete evidence of intelligent life beyond the Earth. As humanity verges on becoming a spacefaring civilization, we are starting to set our sights on colonizing other planets within our solar system. Back and forward contamination will be key concerns in the run-up to this, with several solar system hotspots that could be major candidates for life in some form or another. But this raises an odd contradiction. If other celestial bodies in our solar system are hotspots for life too, then life may well be very common in and around the universe. And imagine the possibility with the massive 400 billion stars that make up our own Milky Way galaxy. In the next 1,000 years, we will try to explore beyond the solar system, and the high-level view of colorizing the Milky Way galaxy is looming. We presume this ambition to be universal among all forms of intelligent life, but this raises an interesting question. If intelligent life aims to colonize its host galaxy, then in a massive 500 billion stars that make up our galactic backyard, where are the aliens? Even if not a galactic empire, the lack of even the detection of a radio bubble or any other evidence that something remotely intelligent might exist elsewhere is a little unnerving for some, potentially suggesting a number of possibilities for humanity. Does it mean we're alone? Are we the only intelligent civilization out there?
Maybe.
Or are we the first? Maybe we're just unusually advanced and other races exist in far more primitive colonies that are undetectable. Or maybe it means something darker. Maybe it means that there is something that stops a civilization before it gets the chance to jet off around the stars. Some form of barrier to the full advancement of intelligent life.
Maybe
Whatever
it's
the case,
like
it's something we may need to start thinking about very
like a
soon.
low chance of life
Or we
to
may
where
end up facing
it's
extinction sooner than we imagined.
like there aren't a whole lot. There's maybe what was I gonna say? Thinking.
No matter what form intelligent life in the universe may take, one thing we consider to be a universal principle
I just
for all advanced
drew a blank what I was about to say.
instinct to explore. This
Sorry.
is imperative for technology to advance, after all. As a race, we first explored our individual islands and then our planet as a whole. Since then, we've been to the moon and we've sent probes to explore all around our solar system. We've been observing the stars for thousands of years, but in the last century we've added a crucial layer to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence: radio telescopes, which we can use to tune in to the background noise of our universe. In the next 20 or 30 years, we hope to send the first humans to land and colonize the planet of Mars, thus being the first time humanity will have ever colonized another planet. Following this, we aim to go higher. We have already highlighted Earth-like planets orbiting nearby stars, and we are slowly but surely developing ways to get there. Regardless of politics, race, creed, or religion, one ambition we all possess is the drive to explore. We presume this principle to be common of all races in the universe advanced enough to understand their own existence. The next stage of our conquest would be to eventually spread out and explore the entire galaxy, bit by bit, over thousands and millions of years. This would increase our chances of survival from extinction exponentially, whilst bolstering our access to power and natural resources and creating a cosmic empire for a race that could exceed 100 billion people. Of course, we are nowhere near that advanced, but our existence is already very detectable to anyone who might be intelligent around us. For over 100 years, we have been broadcasting a radio bubble, a circular, expanding area of our strongest radio broadcasts that have leaked out and are moving away from Earth at more or less the speed of light. As such, our radio bubble is now about 200 light years in diameter, and though this is nothing compared to the size of the Milky Way galaxy, our whispers have passed by several thousand star systems. During this century, we have also sent numerous probes out. Voyager is currently in interstellar space and will pass by many neighbouring stars within the next few million years. In short, you don't need to be a galactic civilization to be detectable to other civilizations in your galaxy. But as nearby civilizations could tune in and listen to our broadcasts, we have been doing the same for them too. With life on Earth being so varied, prevalent and resilient, it's hard to argue that planets extremely similar to ours, such as Kepler-22b, would not be teeming with life. Even moons and dwarf planets in our solar system alone have a very real possibility of supporting some form of primitive life in their oceans, and that's just in our solar neighbourhood. With so much potential for life in this region alone, a galaxy with an estimated 400 billion stars and star systems should theoretically be an absolute goldmine for life, and perhaps intelligent life. With 400 billion chances, at least a few intelligent civilizations should have emerged.
Gotta turn this around.
The age of the Milky Way,
Oh, we finished.
one or two
Oh,
would be
piece
older
fell
and
off.
therefore potentially more advanced than us. Well, we presume this anyway, and it begs the question, why is there no sign of any sort of spacefaring civilization in the Milky Way? We aren't even talking about a galactic civilization, but how come we've never detected a radio bubble, found a probe,
There, maybe?
seen a ship, or even picked up a recurring intelligence signal?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
this lack of any evidence of intelligent life is what is known as the Fermi paradox, and it is a huge mystery of space. We've listened to the skies for many years, and our search has even gone extragalactic, but we've never detected even a whisper of another race beyond Earth. Many have created theories on this paradox, and they cover a wide range of possible explanations.
Bag 7. How ye?
So what's going on? Why, with such sheer potential for life within such a vast galaxy, we never detected this thing? Well, we don't know. We only know of life on Earth and have nothing to compare it to in order to understand why the galaxy seems so quiet. We have to find life elsewhere. One thing we do seem to have to base our search on, however, is radio waves. It's no secret that radio waves have helped us but comparing life on it and draw conclusions from a dead end is impulsive to say the least. Hydrogen being the most abundant element in the universe we would expect to find a radio bubble. However, an advanced radio system might not even leak at all. It may have at some point in its development, but it may have only been detectable from Earth during, say, Jurassic time. These signals will become undetectable eventually. Perhaps something may be emitting from other galaxies that we don't know. So, a number of variable factors being the culprit for never having detected a radio bubble. On the same wavelength, pardon the pun, as listening at the wrong time, some people think the age of the universe is simply just too massive to make listening for a century an accurate survey length. While the Milky Way galaxy is old and vast, we may well be very early on, or even the first spacefaring civilization in the galaxy's history. After all, 10 billion years isn't that old if you consider how long it took before humans emerged on Earth some 4 billion years after its creation. Maybe we would have better luck detecting a civilization if we fast forward 8 billion years for when Milkdrometer forms to bring 1.5 trillion stars within audible reach of each other. Some argue that we focus far too much on human-centric life. With so many possibilities for primitive life in our solar system, it's probably pretty likely that organic life exists all over the cosmos, but microbes don't broadcast radio waves. Maybe it is intelligent life that is so improbable that we'd have to travel billions of light years before the right chain of events could occur for intelligent life elsewhere, if it were possible at all. After all, intelligent life on this planet could only be considered a defect in evolution. Humans are, compared to other species, very poorly optimized to Earth conditions. We survived because we were able to use tools, a necessity given we lost our ability to climb. If evolution was fully primed and not defective, we may have fast-tracked to a more primitive, but better adapted hunter species. So perhaps 400 billion star systems simply isn't enough chance for intelligent life to emerge, as we know it at least. The odds are slashed even further when you look at how well suited our sun is to support intelligent life. Cosmic rays are zipping all around space, across hundreds of thousands of light years. If these rays hit planets like ours, developed and intelligent life simply couldn't evolve or survive. Our sun protects us by ejecting solar winds, which act as a huge ball-like shield around the solar system called the heliosphere. However, these solar winds are also quite capable of destroying us, saved only by Earth's magnetic field, which diverts these particles. So not only would intelligent life have to evolve in such a precise way, you'd also need just the right type of star and a well-optimized magnetic field around the planet before an intelligent species even had a chance of evolving. One thing that is worth pointing out also is that our methods of searching could be quite naive. We used a number of science fiction benchmarks to look for alien life, but these are all, in fact, flawed in some respects. The things we look for and we view as indicators may be completely redundant. Dyson structures, isotropic beacons, self-replicating probes, all of these are fundamentally flawed ideas, yet we still look with a biased eye towards them. The biggest fundamental flaw may well be that of the Type 3 galactic civilization on the Kardashev scale. We have surveyed thousands of galaxies looking for galactic cohesion, but why would an intelligent civilization need to colonize an entire galaxy? Perhaps occupying more than a few solar systems is needless. Even with 1 trillion humans, we wouldn't even need a fraction of the total expanse of this galaxy. It would also take millions of years to colonize, and that's only if everything went according to plan 400 billion times over. If intelligent life is like us, with a finite period of merely a few decades where they are fixed to in space,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
grossly impractical.
6,
A galactic civilization
7,
would also need
8.
to crack the issue of travelling faster than the speed of light, but Perhaps faster than light travel is truly impossible, and our ideas
1,
of
2,
wormholes are just completely
3,
overblown. Even within a finite
4,
area
5,
such as a galaxy, light speed is too slow to
6,
fit the purpose. Would there really be any
7,
point in
8.
colonizing an entire galaxy at this pace? If you want to take anything from these theories, just know that our methods of searching for extraterrestrial intelligence could be the issue, and not the targets themselves. However, there is one final theory, something that many people believe spells trouble for us as a race. It states that all civilizations do aim to go galactic, but they have all failed, and if true, this could mean that we are racing towards extinction faster than we know. This theory is known as the Great Filter. It is the idea that there is no galactic civilization because every spacefaring civilization reaches a barrier that causes them to go extinct or halt in progress, and as such, no species has ever passed it. Considering this with the Fermi paradox, it leads you to two conclusions. Either we could be approaching that barrier and are set for inevitable doom, or we could become the first civilization to pass it. But what could that barrier be? Well, asteroids are a key candidate. Every solar system has millions of asteroids flying around, and it is commonplace for planets to be pounded with meteorites. This is what caused the dinosaurs to die out. Perhaps a civilization eventually runs out of time to spread out, and an asteroid sets them back to the Stone Age, if not wiping them out altogether. This might actually be a best case scenario for us. If we can reach Mars within the century, then we will dramatically improve our chances of surviving this eventuality. Something a bit more menacing is disease and superbugs. Even with improving treatments, something we have always been one step behind is disease. We have complex antibiotic treatments here on Earth, but these are beginning to wear off. As antibiotic overuse and misuse ensues, diseases are becoming resistant to antibiotics. Maybe one day a disease will become resistant enough to rip through the human race and wipe us out. Ebola was a very small-scale early warning sign of this.
Now I have
Maybe
COVID.
our quest for the stars itself will be the catalyst. Bat contamination is a concern that other celestial bodies may pose
Bat
plagues
contamination.
quickly ravage life on Earth if transported back, or swiftly infect anything that lands near it on other planets. Nuclear warfare is a common idea too.
Yeah.
With all the nuclear weapons we've developed, even in the USA alone, we could wipe everything off the face of the Earth several times over.
Exactly.
With so many weapons built, one instance of nuclear war could trigger a chain of political responses that sends us into a nuclear winter and potentially back to the Dark Ages. A chillingly realistic doom with the rising nuclear tensions in North Korea and Russia. There are other ideas. Some believe AI is always the last invention of an advanced civilization, or it is accidentally outpaced and overthrown.
This is why I never treat a computer or an AI or something, or even like a basic AI with respect, because I don't want them to take over. I believe that will happen eventually though. Once we get true AI, it's all over.
But until we detect some form of life on another planet which we can reconcile our own development against, we simply cannot be sure. Perhaps if there is no galactic civilization, yet we are on the cusp, then we have surpassed the filter. Perhaps we could have completed a miraculous escape. But then, perhaps a great filter is too general. After all, the universe is so vast and complex,
1, 2,
it's
3,
somewhat hard to believe
4,
that a one-size-fits-all barrier exists.
6, 7.
Perhaps it is arbitrary based on the system, and we are just an incredibly lucky species. Maybe intelligent life is so incredibly complex that one civilization per galaxy is too optimistic. Maybe intelligent life does exist, but it's so distant that we wouldn't have a trail to detect it. Perhaps life is completely different to what we know, and thus is undetectable to both parties, as what we believe to be indicators are completely redundant to the other side. Maybe it is the age after all, and we have been listening for just too insignificant a time to include on alien possibility. There are so many maybes when approaching these theories. There are so many plausible explanations of variable factors. The universe is so incomprehensibly vast that it is almost inescapably likely that some form of intelligent life, however advanced or primitive, exists somewhere in creation. But it could be so wildly different to ours that until we come into direct contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, we will never know for sure. And who knows when that day will be.
Better camera
Natural
angle.
satellites are the moons which orbit the planets of the universe. There are nearly 200 confirmed moons orbiting planets in the solar system alone, with probably dozens more undiscovered satellites lurking at the distant edges of the Kuiper Belt. The 6 outermost of the 8 planets each have at least one natural satellite.
Something like this, but I don't think that'll work well.
4 gas giant planets each have dozens. With this many satellites vastly outnumber the planets of the solar system, it's more than likely that the many billions of planets in the Milky Way galaxy are home to at least one natural satellite, from small asteroids to large Jupiter-like moons. But while their numbers are expected to be many, we've yet to actually confirm their existence by seeing one. As our technology for detecting planets in the galaxy has improved, the focus has begun shifting towards attempting to identify the moons around these remote worlds, which, if confirmed, would completely bolster the list of places in the universe which might be habitable to life as we know it. But we still haven't found them yet, and as such, the hunt for the galaxy's exomoons is ongoing. An exomoon is the shorthand for extrasolar moon, any natural satellite orbiting a planet beyond the solar system.
I think that's better.
In the last decade, we have discovered
See a lot more
of extrasolar planets around stars in the Milky Way.
We also have my
One thing we've noticed is that our solar system is fairly typical. And so if other star systems in the galaxy are like ours, where there are planets, there should be exomoons.
What's that?
We predict that there are billions,
That should be better.
if not trillions, of moons orbiting
See a lot
exoplanets
more.
out there, and they are expected to outnumber planets in our galaxy at least tenfold. If these exomoons are anything like moons such as Enceladus, Europa and Titan, then they present a myriad of destinations for habitable rocky worlds orbiting planets similar to Jupiter or Saturn. But the problem is, we can't actually see them. We have never
That seems a lot
identified
better.
an exomoon because satellites like the ones in our solar system are just too tiny and dark to be seen from hundreds or even thousands of light years across space. Current technology is enabling us to scratch the surface of the planetary systems orbiting stars, but their small, dark moons are just a step too far for present-day technology. Therefore, exomoon study is almost entirely dictated by the common traits we can infer from studying the moons in our solar system. All of the gas giant planets in the solar system have at least a dozen moons, and this number seems to increase with the size and mass of the planet. Given that the vast majority of exoplanets we have detected are gas giant planets like Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus and Neptune, you'd expect many of these exoplanets to house rich, diverse collections of natural and perhaps unnatural satellites. The vast majority of these probably resemble the moons we see today. However, when taking into account the inconceivable number of planets in the known universe, we can also probably expect to find some weird and wonderful variances. In addition to forming naturally around the parent planet, some moons may be captured worlds, like Neptune's moon of Triton, or they could even
like something that I can do.
fallen into orbit around a particularly
Yeah, it's better. You see
while
stuff
passing
going on
through
over here,
star
or
systems.
stuff going on over here.
This could allow for satellites far larger than the ones in our solar system, moons with
It's not really too much I
magnetic fields
could do,
and even water.
because once you get
Exomoons could
too
be
far
found
back,
within
we
the
can see the
habitable
back of my
zone
monitor.
Expected star systems all over the galaxy, potentially giving rise to dozens of small worlds with their own habitable properties around exoplanets, perhaps with sufficiently massive satellites boasting conditions analogous to those we enjoy on Earth today.
That should do.
But, as mentioned, these are all just ideas, due to the fact that we've never seen one up close. But why is this?
1, 2, 3,
Well, detecting
4,
exomoons from interstellar space
5,
is an
6,
enormous challenge.
7.
Direct imaging, which is the process of simply pointing a telescope at the star and hoping for the best, is just not feasible here. Not only do the immense distances render small satellite bodies virtually invisible to even the sharpest of telescopes, but the staunch differences in luminosity between the host star and parent planet obscures the satellites as well.
Somebody
So,
tried to hit
instead
me.
of searching for one directly, another thing we could do is search for any signatures that the exomoon produces. For example, when Jupiter's moon of Io crosses through the lines of Jupiter's magnetosphere, a powerful frictional current is created around it that emits radio waves. Such a signal would be easier to detect than an invisible
The
small
resolution
drop,
should be
but it is
better now.
still just the wrong side of mankind's technology. One method, which is widely used for this sort of
It
thing,
feels
is
better,
to take measurements of radial
especially on this camera.
This method, also known as Doppler
I missed.
spectroscopy, or the wobble method, is the process of analysing a star's spectrum to detect signs of something acting upon it. Just as a star is always exerting a gravitational influence on the planets orbiting around it, those planets create their own very minor counter-movement in the star, a reverse wobble. If this occurs within a star system that we are observing, then the radial velocity of the star, that is, the rate of change in distance
6,
between
1, 2,
it and us, will vary periodically.
3, 4.
This slight back and forth movement relative to us is detectable as redshift and blue shift lines in the star's spectral data. Such lines are evidence of a planet in the system. This method has helped us to identify no less than 880 exoplanets to date, approximately 1/5 of all discovered. As spectroscopy technology improves, one hope is that we may be able to begin analysing planets for similar signatures of moons as they cause the planet to wobble. But we are still a considerable way off the technical capacity to be able to detect something so incredibly subtle. This method also requires the star in question's orbital plane to be aligned with our line of sight on the Earth, so that the countermotion of the star moves it backwards and forwards to create the Doppler shift lines. So in reality, this rules out a large class of
1, 2,
exoplanets out
3,
there, as well as their
4,
exomoons, because most will
5,
simply not have their planes aligned
6,
with us.
7.
Unfortunately, when we analyse distant star systems, we more often than not need the parent planet to give us some clues. This brings us to the next method of exomoon detection, the transit method. This is the same method we use to detect most of the known exoplanets, and is generally the most reliable method when it comes to detecting things around stars. This can be performed when an exoplanet passes in front of its parent star relative to the Earth. When this happens, the light being emitted from that star is ever so slightly dimmed as the planet passes in front,
1,
blocking out a small section.
2, 3,
This is a
4,
great way to detect planets orbiting stars, and it even
5, 6,
enables us to reverse
7.
engineer some of the planet's characteristics, including the distance from its parent star and thus estimations of its size and mass. We detect the dimming caused by these planets as small variations in the measurements of a star's light, and so it is possible that exomoon signatures could also be extrapolated from the data. Because the dimming of a star is proportional to the radius of the transiting object, a planet-moon system which is passing in front of its parent would block out more light than just a planet. In addition, the presence of a sufficiently massive exomoon would slightly delay the timing of the transit, as the barycenter of the system is tugged back by the satellite's gravitational influence. Such a motion would produce an exomoon signature known as a transit timing variation. But
It's
this
not
is
mirrored.
easily
I
caused by
expect it to.
planets
It would be
elsewhere in the
mirrored,
star
but it's not.
system, which are acting on the orbit of the planet under observation. Nevertheless, data from the Kepler mission, which ended in 2018, has been used to identify a handful of exomoon candidates, but to date none of these have been confirmed. The main driving force behind uncovering these satellite signs is the Hunt for Exomoon
I have an extra one.
project, founded by British exomoonologist David Kipping, whose aim is to identify exomoon signatures from the mission's data for further observation. The HEK uses transit timing variations and measurements of radial velocity to identify potential exomoon targets. The project has submitted no less than 6 papers suggesting candidates in the last 9 years, with the most promising candidate coming in 2017, Kepler 1625bi. Kepler 1625 is one of the many stars observed by the Kepler instruments since 2009.
Boom, done with that
It
side.
lies about 8,000 light
1,
years
2,
from the Earth,
3.
in the constellation of Cygnus.
1, 2, 3.
It has a similar mass to
Wait a
our
second.
Sun, but is about 70% larger, owing to its more mature phase,
Oh, I'm so smart.
at 8.7 billion years old.
Yes, I am.
While the full extent of its planetary system is probably larger, we have identified one planet orbiting the star, denoted as Kepler 1625b. It takes roughly 8 months to orbit, so we are quite restricted in when we can study it. We recorded 3 transits of the planet between 2009 and 2013, and what we have managed to ascertain is that the planet is probably a super-Jupiter, similar in diameter to our largest planet, but several times more massive. This planet was identified as a candidate exoplanet in 2015, and it was verified in the following year. But some say that the data suggests more than an exoplanet in the vicinity, rather a planet-moon system. The HEK analysed the transit data recorded and uncovered 2 inconsistencies, perhaps consistent with the signature of an exomoon. The first was a transit timing variation. The planet's transit of the star was delayed slightly, most likely by another gravitational influence pulling on it. In addition, they also found that just over 3 hours after one of the 19-hour transits ended, another flicker caused by a slight dimming was detected, consistent with a large moon trailing the planet at distance, like a dog following its owner. In the absence of instrumental or data processing anomalies, Kipping argues that an exomoon hypothesis is the simplest and most fitting explanation, and the only one which fits both scenarios. The thing is, if this is a moon, then it would be a fairly atypical one. In order to explain the flicker, the exomoon's diameter would have to be around 3.5 times the Earth, making it only slightly smaller than Neptune, with probably around 30 times the Earth's mass. At this size, it is unlikely to be a rocky moon. Rather, it is probably a gas giant moon. But gas giants do not form as natural satellites around planets, and so the satellite must have arrived by some other means. It is most likely a captured world, like Triton, which began life elsewhere in the system before being pulled into orbit around a larger body. The candidate exomoon, dubbed Kepler 1625bi, appears to orbit about 3 million kilometers away from its parent planet, which could be indicative of the moon once being pulled into a wide-angle orbit by the intense gravity of Kepler 1625b, far greater than even the power of Jupiter, and so able to exert a vice-like grip over the rest of its system. If the satellite was once a Neptune-sized planet in its own right, then we would expect it to have its own system of moons. But if they are anything like the small icy moons of Uranus and Neptune, they would be impossible to detect. However, if any are still with the captured giant as it orbits the super-Jupiter today, then it would be a moon of a moon, or a sub-satellite. But then that's getting a bit ahead of ourselves, speculating on the moons of a moon we don't even know exists yet. If it was to be confirmed, then Kepler 1625bi would be the first known gas giant moon. But that's quite a big if, as the evidence is far from conclusive. The star system has since been observed using the Hubble telescope after being allocated a preliminary 40-hour slot. Unfortunately, these 40 hours did not fall on a time in which the planet was in transit of the star, and so we still need to use the telescope to make more extensive observations before we can conclude.
Look at that. Oh,
Furthermore,
he's
a
off.
recent independent study found that a planet-only model
Pieces keep on falling off all the
data
time.
recorded from Kepler 1625 better than a planet-moon model. They suggest that the transit signal of the moon is merely an artifact of the data reduction, and that there is no significant evidence for the moon's existence. Many more transit observations will need to be made before we can get any closer, but sadly the technology to do so is just out of reach. And so for now, Kepler 1625bi remains
Okay, on to the next bag.
a fascinating exomoon candidate.
Bag 8. Hell yeah, we're starting the Colosseum looking Colosseum part. Yay.
Candidates have we got on the watch list? Well, MOA 2011 BLG 262 is one of the main ones. This planet-moon system was proposed in 2013. Models of a moon orbiting gas giant planets several times the mass of Jupiter within the galactic bulge area of the Milky Way. Unlike other exomoon candidates, MOA 2011 was identified not by transit timing, but by microlensing. Microlensing occurs around large, dark bodies in space as light is slightly warped by their gravitational fields as it travels towards us. This is a good way to detect free-floating rogue planets barreling around the Milky Way's darkest recesses. And this is what is being proposed, a rogue planet-moon system. But with that said, the data is also fit by a model of a brown dwarf with a planet system, a faint failed star circled by a planet 18 times the mass of the Earth, and not an exomoon. Because our observations are little more than relative guesswork at this point, it is impossible to say which could be the case at the moment. But perhaps in the future, more advanced microlensing could help us to uncover those planets we cannot see through transit and radial velocity measurements.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Earlier
7,
this year, no less than 6
8,
new exomoon candidates were proposed by the
9, 10.
FCK, all identified via transit timing inconsistencies around their parent star. However, a recent independent study reviewed each candidate, validating each via 3 rigorous tests for transiting exomoons.
4,
1.
5,
Are there significant
6,
excess transit timing variations?
1, 2, 3,
2. Is there a significant periodic variation?
4,
And 3.
5,
Is there mathematical evidence for a moon's
6.
mass causing these variations? Under these tests, 2 candidates were ruled to be more likely the result of interactions with other hidden planets, and each of the other 4 candidates only passed a maximum of 1 test out of the 3, so it's hardly indisputable. That same review also found that Kepler 1625bi passes 2 out of the 3 tests. So for now, it would seem, it remains our best hope of finding an exomoon. The infuriating yet tantalizing thing about exomoons is that they are just not attainable to us yet. They are too small, dark and hidden, but our technology to find them is merely in the fledgling stage. So while it is too early currently to hope for confirmation, it is more than likely something we can look forward to more coverage and research into in the near future. We've finally broken the ice with these emerging candidates, and before long we will probably have dozens of them. And sooner or later we're bound to come across that one which makes it all real. And once it does, it opens the door to trillions of new habitable worlds in the cosmos, and loads of new places to think about the emergence of life and space exploration destinations alike. The James Webb Telescope, which is due to launch late in 2021, will help us to improve our search techniques. Having been delayed for so long, it has a lot of expectation riding on it. But once it does finally launch, it will reveal space to us in pristine new detail. Perhaps finally helping us to identify the bewildering numbers of exomoons out there.
5,
We've
6,
already pondered the idea of a gas
1,
giant.
2, 3, 4, 5,
So
6,
just think what could lie
7,
elsewhere in the vast universe,
8,
let alone in our local
9,
community. Perhaps
10,
when we are
11,
able to get
and
closer,
12.
we will discover moons beyond the solar system that are even more weird and wonderful. This is my new series. It's called Out of This World, or OOTW. It's my second non-GD series after conspiracy cases, and though it's difficult to predict what the future holds, I'm hoping it will also become a fairly regular feature on my channel. In this series, we'll be covering all things extraterrestrial. I have almost 15 episode ideas ranging from alien conspiracies, theory videos, informational videos about our universe, and some countdowns and top lists. For more information, check the description, and yeah, let's get into today's topic while I'll try to establish a general feel and theme for the series.
Which episode is this one? Oh yeah, have aliens visited Earth?
The prospect of alien life visiting our Earth is something that has been a feature in science fiction for decades. We love the thought of aliens crossing the galaxies to come and observe our tiny blue planet, and this has subsequently spawned thousands of fantasists, theorists, and believers to come forward with many, largely fake or misunderstood, reports of unidentified flying
1,
objects.
2, 3, 4.
The term UFO has become synonymous with stereotypical sci-fi images of little green men and flying saucers, and so when sightings and encounters with unidentified aircrafts that defy explanation do emerge, it can be hard to take them seriously. But over the last 30 years, more than a few compelling encounters have emerged, and at such a key time in our species' lifespan, where technology is on the verge of taking us to the stars and beyond, we really do need to start asking the question, are we alone? This, of course, is a rhetorical question. With 6 billion stars in our galaxy alone, estimated to contain planets that can support life, and with several large exoplanets that we have already found the perfect conditions for life on, it would be ignorant to suggest that we are the only living creatures in the universe. What we're more interested in is intelligent alien life, more
2,
advanced
3, 4,
than us,
5, 6,
and what it plans to do with us when we cross its path.
7,
And that leads you to look at some of the compelling cases
8,
of UFO encounters and
9,
wonder if
10.
they are already here. If a specific alien species has visited Earth, then they possess capabilities that test the bounds of our grasps of science, and harnessing such a technology will be instrumental to our own quest to get off our rocky, fragile planet and colonize elsewhere. Something that has been attempting to gauge a better understanding of such a concept is the US government. With the most well-funded military on the planet and technologies unmatched by any other world power, the concept of an extraterrestrial race visiting Earth is a very sensitive topic, and they would need to understand the motives behind such a voyage. They've had numerous projects that look into UFOs over the years,
One,
one
two,
being Project Blue Book, a
3, 4.
program that spanned over a few decades and investigated over 12,000 reports and sightings of UFOs. Most of these turned out to be misinterpreted sightings of known aircrafts or natural phenomena, but none were determined to pose any threat to national security. However, recently the government acknowledged funding publicly for the first time into a new generation of that project. The Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program was a program put forward by Senator Harry Reid, which used $22 million of funding to identify potential aerospace threats to the US, before being terminated due to more pressing needs for the cash in 2012. Though this sounds exciting, it should not be ruled out that any threat they could identify could be some sort of next-generation aircraft built in secret by a rogue foreign nation. The AATIP was run by Bigelow Aerospace, owned by Las Vegas billionaire Robert Bigelow, who has gone on record as saying that he is convinced that aliens have visited Earth before. And for the first time in human history, as of 2017, there may be solid grounds to suggest that he's not wrong. When the program was initiated, the AATIP encouraged pilots who had previously not reported UFO encounters for fear of mockery to come out and share their experiences.
Don't know where it is. There's hiding. It's like blending in.
Seem to defy science, most involving crafts that can move at unbelievable speeds and follow a similar shape. It's difficult to find the stories credible with the stereotypical view of Martians, but if we open our minds, there are some truly unbelievable cases and encounters with unidentified aircrafts. One such case, predating the AATIP, was the famous case in November 1986, in which a large cargo plane flying from Paris to Tokyo encountered an inexplicable craft that appeared to be following it. The plane was staffed by Captain Kenju Terauchi, who reported, "Our universe is
Oh no,
full
what
of
happened?
mysteries, not least because of its Our universe is full of mysteries, not least because of its size. It gives
Oh well.
rise to some amazing natural phenomena and new occurrences." So this is my new series. It's called Out of This World. Is convinced military on the planet and technologies unmatched by any other world power.
Right, there you go.
The concept of an extraterrestrial race visiting Earth is a very sensitive topic, and they would need to understand the motives behind such a voyage. They've had numerous projects that look into UFOs over the years, one being Project Blue Book, a program that spanned over a few decades and investigated over 12,000 reports and sightings of UFOs. Most of these turned out to be misinterpreted sightings of known aircrafts or natural phenomena, but none were determined to pose any threat to national security. However, recently the government acknowledged funding publicly for the first time into a new generation of that project. The Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program was a program put forward by Senator Harry Reid, which used $22 million of funding to identify potential aerospace threats to the US, before being terminated due to more pressing needs for the cash in 2012. Though this sounds exciting, it should not be ruled out that any threat they could identify could be some sort of next-generation aircraft built in secret by a rogue foreign nation. The AATIP was run by Bigelow Aerospace, owned by Las Vegas billionaire Robert Bigelow, who has gone on record as saying that he is convinced that aliens have visited Earth before. And for the first time in human history, as of 2017, there may be solid grounds to suggest that he's not wrong. When the program was initiated, the AATIP encouraged pilots who had previously not reported UFO encounters for fear of mockery to come out and share their experiences.
Got it.
Dozens of military pilots came forward with stories that seemed to defy
In the
science.
top left corners of
Most involving
videos
crafts
are the
that
videos that I'm
move at
watching.
unbelievable speeds and
So,
follow a similar shape.
actually, can I add?
It's difficult to find the stories credible with the stereotypical view of Martians, but if we open our minds, there are some truly unbelievable cases and encounters with unidentified aircrafts. One such case, predating the AATIP, was the famous case in November
Videos.
1986, in which a large cargo plane flying from Paris to Tokyo encountered an inexplicable craft that appeared to be following it. The plane was staffed by Captain Kenju Terauchi, who reported the incident to ground control. After studying the craft in front of them, they confirmed there was definitely something in the sky, and at some points it was getting much too close to be safe. The craft was described as being the shape of a walnut and largely white, and almost 2 times bigger than the cargo plane. Fearing their safety, Terauchi and his 2 colleagues requested a new flight path, and after doing a complete turn to change positions, the Anchorage Air Force Base in Alaska confirmed they could see some sort of craft on radar following the plane. After being asked if they'd like military intervention, the 3 men refused and the plane landed away from its intended destination to refuel, so that Terauchi could file a report. Later on, the FAA actually confirmed this as an unexplained encounter, but did not want speculation to be spread. Terauchi was strangely banned from flying for some years, and following this, the CIA took the report away from the FAA. FAA head of accidents and investigations at the time, John Callahan, desperately tried to bring more attention to the story for further funding, saying the CIA had actually told the FAA not to speak of the event. This never materialized, but a few weeks later, a similar craft was spotted in the area, an encounter that also failed to receive media attention. A 30-year-old story is prone to misinterpretation over the years, and like so many UFO cases has not actually had much in the way of credible government sources to back it up. So what about a sighting that has just that? In August 2017, the US government revealed an absolutely fascinating video that literally changed the game for UFO enthusiasts. It was recorded on the 14th of November 2004 and was recorded by one of 2 US fighter jets who was sent to investigate an unidentified erratic aircraft behaving in ways that almost defied physics. What was observed was a 40-foot long cylindrical craft that was fluctuating in positions on radar over the Pacific Ocean. It appeared at 80,000 feet on radar and dropped down to 20,000 very quickly, and at the end of the footage it rotates without any obvious force to drive it, and shoots away at speeds no known craft on Earth has ever even come close to. Former director of the AATIP, Luis Elizondo, has been on interview saying that regardless of whether this craft was made by an extraterrestrial force or a foreign power, its maneuverability defied the bounds of any known craft with regards to G-force and air resistance. And the US government warned that this craft had capabilities the US military was incapable of defending itself against. And they were quoted as saying, "Science fiction is now science fact." Mr. Elizondo in a TV interview seemed to heavily imply that he believed the craft was
built on
not
Legos.
Despite this, the AATIP was terminated in 2012, and Mr. Elizondo is now working on a community project named To the Stars, an organisation designed for crowdfunding research into UFOs, to try and uncover the truth behind what was seen that day. The 2 stories just mentioned are 2 in a vast ocean of stories, sightings and potentially alien encounters, but both are 2 of the most believable. But let's for a second forget our impulse to dismiss such a story and assume these were both days mankind has encountered alien life on our planet. What can we conclude from this? Well, we can draw on a number of similarities between the 2 described aircrafts. If indeed these are alien crafts, it is almost a certainty that they are from the same species. It's mathematically very unlikely that we have more than one race advanced enough to observe us away from their home by such invasive means. So if an alien race was behind both crafts, then they seem to have some sort of fleet. Both these crafts conform to a somewhat similar UFO stereotype, but let's not forget that stereotype exists for a reason. The shapes described would most likely be robust, extremely aerodynamic and simplistic at the same time. Let's also not forget that aesthetics in transport is merely a human concept. Perhaps this civilization opts for functionality over fashion. This species has a grasp on science that we cannot even begin to understand, with their atmospheric craft being capable of shooting across the sky and getting out of range of sight at alarming speeds. But if they've been here for decades,
4 of these now.
observing us across multiple ships, where would they be hiding? Well, some believe a number of extraterrestrial habitats, such as the dark side of the moon or Mars, and there have been conspiracy theories to suggest both of these. However, as Mr. Elizondo pointed out in an interview, this craft is capable of handling extreme force. Such force can be found at the unexplored depths of the ocean that we simply cannot reach. And with no more than 5% of our oceans explored, any number of ships and crafts varying in sizes could be hidden down there in the sunless depths of our oceans. This is all speculation, but imagine if it were true. What if we were genuinely under observation by a species who has been monitoring our planet for decades?
That could be cool.
Well, this would almost certainly confirm warp or light speed travel possibilities, given there are no likely nearby candidate planets to harbour such a species, and we would have detected it if they were anywhere near us. The immediate worry that springs to mind would be their intentions. Would they mean to do us harm? Well, while we wouldn't know their true motives,
not yet.
It's fairly unlikely. If an alien species has the capability to travel around the galaxy, then anything they could want with Earth, be it living space or natural resources, could be found in much better abundance on other planets.
I think just if there were to be, they'd just be watching us.
If they understand our technology, then maybe they would learn themselves. Besides, while humanity always seems to be war-oriented, if we found another species on a planet we discovered, wouldn't we want to observe it and see how it has come to evolve?
Nope.
Speculation at this point, but not entirely unlikely.
Scientists would, but not sure about the government.
The species in question can detect radio,
Government
which it most
would go straight to
it's too ambitious to
killing
think
it,
that, if indeed
especially
there are
America.
aliens, in the next 100 years, we may have
Sadly.
made some contact with them. There are a lot of questions that need answering, but for now it seems as if our bureaucratic big brother is purposely keeping us in the dark. Perhaps they know a lot more than we do, considering the AATIP was set up so inside intel would only be shared around a select few. Perhaps there is a lot more to these cases than we realise. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Tune in next time when we'll be exploring the concept of intelligent life elsewhere in the universe further, when we analyse compelling arguments that we may have discovered an alien civilization currently building a massive solar harvesting device about 1,400 light years away. What do you think of this series? It's very early days, so what should I change to make it better? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to whack them in the comments below. Thanks a lot guys, I'll see you all soon. Of all the small, bright objects in the night sky, there is one that particularly stands out against the morning and evening sky. It's Venus, aka our sister world. Venus has always been a part of human study and culture, dating back to the earliest civilizations. But it wasn't until the last century that we began to understand what it is truly like on the surface. We now know that Venus is a burning, toxic world, and nothing like the Earth. But the two planets do share similarities, and once shared even more than that. Both planets are similar in size, mass and composition, and both are made from the same materials, and are relatively similar distances from the Sun. So why is it that Venus is such a barren, suffocated wasteland now, while its sister planet prevailed? Venus is one of 4 rocky terrestrial planets in the inner solar system. These rocky planets formed from the remnants of the cloud that gave birth to the Sun, with leftover atoms and gas sticking together to form dust and rocks. As these rocks grew larger, they eventually became large enough to be somewhat rounded by their own gravity, turning into planetary embryos which were smashing together as they fell into position in orbit around the infant Sun. Billions of years later, and 4 terrestrial worlds remain: Mercury, Venus, the Earth, and lastly Mars. Of the 4 planets, Earth lies in the most ideal position around the Sun, in the so-called Goldilocks zone, where it's not too hot or too cold, allowing
That'd
the
be
planet
better.
to sustain liquid water on its surface.
See if I can do that.
Venus, on the other hand, got too close to the Sun and became a scorched world of extreme weather, with surface temperatures that would melt zinc. Venus is the hottest place in the solar system, even hotter than Mercury, and like Mercury, it doesn't possess a moon or a satellite. It orbits at just over 100 million kilometers away from the Sun, closer than the Earth by about a quarter. When the planets align, Venus approaches Earth as closely as 40 million kilometers, practically our next door neighbor.
Watch cam.
As it orbits,
Watch cam.
Venus rotates in the opposite direction to all the other planets in the solar system apart from Uranus. Planets tend to orbit and rotate along the same disks and in the same direction because of the motion of the rotating cloud that collapsed to form the system's star. One thing that might counteract this resonance is a collision with another planet or planetary embryo. Such a collision might also explain how slowly Venus spins in this opposite direction. The planet is roughly the same size as Earth, but
Making
takes
bombs for Hitler.
240
Hell yeah.
Earth days to rotate just once, longer than it takes to complete a full orbit of the Sun. As such, its day is longer than its year. Venus shares many characteristics with the Earth. Both planets have a thin crust, a molten mantle, and a central core. And because it is so nearby and luminous, it has captured our attention since records began. Venus is named after the Roman god of love and beauty, and is the only planet named after a female deity. In fact, Venus is more associated with femininity than any other planet, but not every civilization has fully understood the planet when addressing it. The Mayans, an early Mesoamerican civilization, knew it as Chak-Ek, or the Great Star, on the belief that Venus was actually a luminous star and not a planet. Some civilizations even went one better and mistook the world for 2 bright stars, the reason being the nature of its orbit around the Sun. When Venus overtakes Earth along its
Sorry if
orbital
this is
path,
hurting y'all-
it flips from
y'all's
being
head or
visible
something.
at sunrise to being visible at sunset. As such, the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans all thought Venus was actually
You know,
2 separate stars,
This looks not that bad.
the morning star and the evening star, which the Romans knew as Lucifer and Vesper. Not everybody made this mistake. Some early civilizations did correctly recognize the morning and evening star as a single object. The earliest acknowledgement of Venus as a single object was made by the Sumerians, an ancient Mesopotamian civilization which existed in the Bronze Age between 4,000 and 5,000 years ago. A cylinder seal recovered from the Jemdet Nazir period about 5,000 years ago indicates that the Sumerians knew the object as Inanna, a Mesopotamian goddess associated with sex, war, politics, and justice. Another early artifact naming Venus as a single object is the Babylonian Venus tablet of Amisaduqa, a record of Venus's movements, which is believed to have been created over 1,500 years before the Common Era began. The Babylonians viewed Venus as the bright queen of the sky. In the 1600s, Galileo studied the planet and discovered its orbital phases, which helped him to understand that the solar system was centered around the Sun and not around the Earth. But even as telescopes improved and we began to understand the planet better, we were unable to learn any more about its surface because we couldn't see inside it. Venus is covered in a layer of reflective clouds of sulfuric acid in its upper atmosphere. This makes the planet brighter than it would usually be, but also blank and featureless. For this reason, scientists debated for centuries what could lie on the surface, pondering everything from an ocean world to a full-scale inhabited world like our own. But in order to find out, we'd have to actually land on the surface and see for ourselves. Venus was the first planet we managed to successfully fly by with a robotic spacecraft, namely the US Mariner 2 spacecraft in 1962. Then, throughout the 60s and 70s, the Soviets began to get closer with the Venera program. In 1967, Venera 4 entered the Venusian atmosphere and showed that the temperature was much higher than previously thought. Venera 7 was the first successful Soviet mission to make it to the surface, and then, over a decade later, Venera 13 made it to the surface of the planet alive and beamed back over 2 hours of groundbreaking data and the first pictures of the alien surface. Venera 13 revealed once and for all what a hellish, tortured wasteland Venus is today. With an average temperature of 462 degrees Celsius, Venus is by far the hottest place in the solar system. Its lower atmosphere beneath the clouds, a choking mix of 96% carbon dioxide and most of the remainder nitrogen, which is unevenly distributed across the planet's surface. The pressure is 91 times that of the Earth's surface pressure. That's the same pressure as found thousands of feet below sea level. As technology has improved, missions have been sent in the years since to perform radar mappings of the planet. Whereas visible light collected by normal cameras cannot pass through the thick clouds of the upper atmosphere, microwave radiation can pass through, and so we got our first surface maps. In 1990, the Magellan spacecraft began orbit around Venus and mapped the surface in great detail. It also detected extreme winds, abundant lightning, and then in 1995, a highly reflective substance in the higher reaches of the planet that is thought to be snow-like, but its composition is unknown. Venus has over 1,000 impact craters, all of which are at least 3 kilometers wide, meaning they were formed by meteors at least 50 meters in diameter. On Earth, a 50-meter asteroid would be enough to wipe out a city, but on Venus, any meteor below this size wouldn't even make it to the ground before being disintegrated on its approach. Furthermore, the vast majority of these large impact craters are in immaculate condition, no subsequent impacts or weathering. While Venus doesn't have any means for tidal heating, a discovery made in January of this year suggests young, fresh lava flows on the surface and spikes in sulfur dioxide. Venus is still a geologically active world. Much of the Venusian surface appears to have been shaped by volcanism. The planet has over 150 volcanoes which are over 100 kilometers in diameter, and 80% of the planet's surface consists of vast plains caused by ancient lava flows. What this indicates is that the planet was completely resurfaced over 300 million years ago. All the volcanoes must have spilled over at once, cooling into vast plains and highlands, and like the impact craters, this landscape has been well preserved ever since. On Earth, plate tectonics drive the reshaping of the crust, but Venus lacks tectonic activity. So while the surface of the Earth is constantly being reshaped every 100 million years or so, on Venus it takes closer to 500 million years. Furthermore, this isn't a consistent or gradual process of convection currents. Scientists think that whatever heat is inside the planet's core rises up and heats the mantle, making it hotter and hotter until eventually it causes a global subduction event. The entire surface is swallowed up, resurfaced by lava, and hardens out again, where it remains for hundreds of millions of years before the process repeats. The rest of the planet's surface area is made up of 2 highland continents. One, Ishtar Terra in the north, is about the size of Australia and is named after the Babylonian goddess of love, Ishtar. The other is Aphrodite Terra, after the Greek goddess of love, which is roughly the size of South America and lies just below the planet's equator. Even in its hostile, extreme present-day state, Venus is still a fascinating world, but it hasn't always been this extreme. In fact, this toxic desert planet may have once known its own Earth-like conditions. Back when the solar system was young, Venus may have been the place to be. The sun is the giver of light within the solar system, radiating energy as heat from its surface.
Is it too bright? Should I turn the light off?
Planets. Earth sits in a fortunate position. It is just the right distance from the
I'm
sun
just
to
camera
have
though.
sustained an atmosphere for billions of years. However, the sun hasn't always been at the brightness and intensity
Maybe that.
we enjoy today. As a star ages, it burns hotter, making it brighter, and the sun is no exception. 4 billion years ago,
Yeah, right.
it was much younger and fainter, and so were its stellar emissions. At the same time, Earth was forming alongside its lost twin, Venus. Within a few million years of its formation, the Venusian surface had cooled, and unlike Mars, it was large enough to be able to retain its atmosphere. Venus's early
Escaping
atmosphere
me.
consisted of carbon dioxide and water vapor. This atmospheric layer protected and warmed the planet through the process of the greenhouse effect. These early atmospheric gases are transparent to visible light. So, as light from the sun radiates outwards, it passes through the atmospheric layer and warms the planet's surface. Then it hits the ground and the heat is re-emitted as infrared radiation,
There we
which is
go.
absorbed by these atmospheric gases, so the
think
heat
that's a
can't
lot
escape
better.
back out into space. Gravity keeps the atmospheric layer bolted down to the surface like an all-encompassing blanket, which allowed the primordial Venus to retain just enough heat to maintain a temperate climate with a mild atmosphere. As the greenhouse effect maintained the planet's temperature, the water vapor in the atmosphere began to condense and formed clouds. And then the downpour began. Like on Earth, it rained every day for thousands of years on the early Venus, and water flows formed streams, and then rivers, and then lakes, and then vast seas. Venus became an ocean planet, sustained by its temperate atmosphere and fortunate distance from the young sun. It's almost certain that life on Earth began in the oceans, perhaps in deep-sea hydrothermal vents. These vents are driven by
Okay, after
geological
looking again,
activity
sorry,
and
finish
spew
these.
up minerals from the Earth's mantle, and the high temperatures and water mix
Just like
with
yesterday.
molecules, which eventually gave rise to cellular life. When we visited Mars, another planet which may have enjoyed a spell as a water world, we found hydrothermal vents in its dried up ocean floors as well. Mars would have had deep sea vents and habitable oceans for a few 100 million years before it lost too much
Here it
of
is.
its protective
Got it.
atmosphere to space. But Venus, on the other hand, being larger, would have been able to sustain its oceans for around 2 billion years. Given that Venus is geologically active now, it was likely geologically active back then too, meaning there may once have been bubbling hydrothermal vents at the bottom of its oceans, which have now been lost by global subduction events. Given Venus's similarities in size and composition to the Earth, it's hard not to wonder about the possibility of the process of abiogenesis occurring on Venus as well as the Earth. Perhaps chemistry played out on the Venusian seafloors as well, and perhaps Venus was once an inhabited world like the legends foretold. If anything did live on Venus during this period, it likely wouldn't have been anything more than microbes. After all, it took several billion years before multicellular organisms evolved on this planet, as well as a series of global catastrophes and extinctions. Any life on Venus would have almost certainly comprised solely of single-cellular organisms, such as bacteria, but even that is a fascinating possibility. With life as diverse and resilient as it is on Earth, separate windows of opportunity for habitable water worlds on both Mars and Venus, and the speculated habitable conditions of moons like Europa and Enceladus, it gives you hope that extraterrestrial life may be common, thriving on rocky planets and moons throughout the entire galaxy, and maybe in galaxies beyond. So what happened to this lost oceanic kingdom? Well,
On to the next one.
greenhouse effect continued to maintain balance on the planet for hundreds of millions of years. But during this time, the sun was aging and evolving. As it grew older, it burned hotter and became stronger and more intense. As this happened, more heat was being trapped under Venus's atmospheric layer, heating the surface and gradually evaporating the oceans. At higher altitudes, this vapour condensed and fell as rainwater, but before long, the temperature was so hot that the rain was boiling away before it even touched the ground. As the water vapor condensed in the atmosphere, it trapped even more infrared heat under the atmospheric layer, and an irreversible vicious cycle had been set into motion. The oceans dried up and the water vapour was gradually swept into space by solar winds and the lack of a strong magnetic field. All that was left were dry, scorched deserts, destined to be buried and resurfaced by volcanism, and the water world and anything which might have inhabited it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So that's the past, and we know the present. But what about Venus's future? Well, Venus's extreme conditions and close proximity to the Earth make it an intriguing world to study, but maintaining a presence on the surface of such a hostile world is a significant scientific challenge. In 2016, the NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts program explored the idea of the Automaton Rover for Extreme Environments, a wind-powered, self-controlled rover which could survive the conditions of the Venusian surface for extended periods. The idea is still in the planning phase, but there are now hopes that the same concept could be applied to the exploration of Mercury. But then, perhaps landing on the surface of Venus is unnecessary, and the upper atmosphere might be a more reasonable target. While Venus is extreme on its surface, the temperature and pressure drop significantly in the upper layers of the atmosphere. 50 kilometers up, the pressure is similar to the surface of the Earth. Launching something into the upper atmosphere may just give us a shot of our close encounter with our sister world. Scientists have suggested launching aerostats, essentially extremely light balloons, which could enable us to maintain a permanent presence in the upper atmosphere, and perhaps floating laboratories and manned missions one day. However, this kind of technology is still a long way off, as even without the crushing conditions of the Venusian surface, any hot air balloon would still have to be built to withstand high levels of sulfuric acid for sustained periods. Whatever we decide to do, we unfortunately can't get too comfortable, because the sun is still aging and maturing, and the next stage of its life will prove catastrophic for Venus. As the sun exits its main sequence, it will rapidly expand and cool, ballooning to more than 250 times its current diameter. When this happens, Venus and Mercury will be completely engulfed by the new red giant sun, and its story will be over once and for all.
Technically it wouldn't, it would just become a part of the sun, and that's would be a story. It's the story of the sun.
Now a toxic ball of dry rock and gas, waiting to be devoured by a dying star. Venus once had all the qualities to be Earth-like, but ultimately it is just too close to the sun to sustain this. It's interesting and unsettling to think that the extra 25% further out we are from our sun has made all the difference in the long run. Earth is truly a success story of the solar system, but Venus's story is still fascinating and probably more intertwined with ours than we yet realise. It's hard to imagine Venus any other way now, but who knows what events and phenomena might have played out in those 2 billion years when Venus was the Earth's true twin.
4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Wait. I messed up. Only one of those. It sounded cool.
I am in the city of, well, it's not really a city, it's more of a town. It's called Bath. It's in the UK. And the reason I'm... In November 2012, NASA astronomers observed a new galaxy named MACS 0647JD. This galaxy, despite being smaller than the Milky Way, was one of the most intriguing we have ever discovered and was only revealed thanks to an amazing natural phenomenon. The galaxy was picked up using NASA's Hubble telescope and also the Spitzer telescope, but was only made possible by a phenomenon known as gravitational lensing. This occurs when the photons emitted from a luminous object are bent and warped by the gravity of a massive object, usually a galaxy. In this case, however, MACS's light was magnified by not just an intercepting galaxy, but by an entire galaxy supercluster. As such, as of the making of this video, MACS 0647JD remains the farthest galaxy we have ever observed. With an estimated distance of about 13.3 billion light years from Earth, it verges on the very edge of the universe. Or does it? We live in a vast open domain.
Something smells like cologne.
Estimated age of just under 14 billion years old.
I don't know what it is,
We know
but
this
something
because
does.
the oldest visible light we have ever observed is
It's
around
nice.
this age. The furthest light we can see in the universe makes up the boundaries of what we perceive as the
I don't-
observable universe.
It's weird.
Even
You can
if
smell
the
it.
universe was expanding at the speed of light, the observable universe should only have a maximum diameter of just under 28 billion light years based on its age. And yet, given our estimations of redshift, it seems as if our own observable universe is as voluminous as to be over 3 times that size, at around 93 billion light years in diameter. What lies at the edge of, or indeed beyond, the convoluted boundaries of this observable universe
Where does this go?
is still a mystery, but there's an even bigger one lurking beyond the twilight curtain. Thanks to our redshift analysis, we know that some galaxies, including MACS 0647JD, are receding away from us at a rate faster than the speed of light. While their oldest light is still being emitted and is only just reaching us, we now know that these galaxies have since disappeared over the cosmic horizon, and these parts of space will never be reachable again. But how
Nice
can this be?
wormholes.
Why has the universe expanded faster than the speed of light? Why are distant galaxies receding away from us in the first place? And furthermore, why are they speeding up as they go to beyond light speed velocities? It's not impossible to look out at the night sky and wonder, why are so many facts of astrophysics seemingly challenged when we begin to look towards the edge of the void? The so-called observable universe is a spherical region independent to the structure of the entire universe, which encapsulates all the light and matter that is observable to us here on Earth. The observable universe has become synonymous with our study of the cosmos, but every point in space has its own arbitrary observable universe. As such, there is a barrier when, once crossed, things are no longer visible to any particular point, as light has not had enough time to reach that area. This boundary is known as the cosmic event horizon. Our observable universe grows at the speed of light, so any anomaly disappearing over the cosmic horizon would, hypothetically speaking, need to move faster than light in order to escape from our field of view. This should be impossible, according to special relativity, and yet this is exactly what as many as an estimated 96.4% of all galaxies we have ever observed have already done. The light reaching us now is essentially illuminating a galactic hologram. Although a constant visible stream of protons is a sure thing for billions of years to come, those galaxies in question are now physically unreachable to us by any known methods of travel, according to special relativity. But their older light will serve as a sort of replay for their past. Looking towards the edge of the observable universe for this early light is actually very useful to us here on Earth, providing a clear glass pane into the distant past of our universe. Not only has this helped us to determine its estimated age, but we've also been able to piece together its life cycle by looking back through the various stages of its development. We often see black holes swirling gas on their accretion disks to create quasars in the earliest reaches of the historic light. We also see young galaxies and a much more volatile and unpredictable universe in general. Our observable universe is estimated to be 93 billion light years in diameter, but the farthest objects we have ever observed before the cosmic horizon seem to sit at about 46 billion light years into the void. So why is this? Why are we still left with this unanswered question? How can the observable universe be larger than the age of the universe multiplied by the distance travelled by the light within? Well, it's a difficult idea to consider. When looking up at the stars in our own galaxy, there is always a consistent latency that never changes. The light being emitted from our neighbouring star, Proxima Centauri, takes around 4 years to reach us, and that is a consistent delay that doesn't change. But with extragalactic observations, there is no consistent latency. Our universe is expanding at different rates based on what it has been through: matter, neutrinos, radiation, etc. and we are moving through space too. As such, the light emitted from an object very close to us, such as the early formation of the MACS galaxy, once faced an intergalactic journey across ever-expanding space to reach our eyes some 13 billion years on. We now estimate that this galaxy and many other objects at the edge of the observable universe to be as far as 46 billion light years away, and its light would never possibly reach us now, having passed the boundary in which light's speed and the universe's age no longer cooperate. Beyond this barrier, the universe becomes causally disconnected from the observable universe. In other words, segmented, detached, fragmented, and divided. This explains why MACS 0647JD appears to be so young and small for such a seemingly old galaxy. It formed very soon after the universe's creation, a few 100 million years after the Big Bang, hypothetically. But the light it is emitting has been on an absolutely enormous intergalactic journey. This observed phenomenon of increased speed of expansion could potentially mean there may be up to 2 trillion galaxies for us to observe in the future, as opposed to the several hundred billion excess we used to believe. In the future, our observable universe is expected to grow, and our field of view is expected to expand. But keep in mind that there is a clear disparity between the observable universe and what we know as the reachable universe. The reachable universe is what you'd expect, the area before the cosmic horizon, where we could still reach distant interstellar and perhaps intergalactic objects given enough time. Beyond the cosmic horizon, well, nobody really knows what lies beyond it. We don't know what actually happens to galaxies once they pass over. While we presume that it is just more of the same, stars, galaxies, planets, and black holes, we do not know if there is anything beyond, and that is not just a massive void or a physical edge. But it is a likely scenario that more of the same does exist beyond the boundary, and if you thought a 93 billion light year spanning observable universe was vast, No Man's Land will blow your mind away.
No Man's Sky. I shouldn't laugh at that. It's not fun.
At 93 billion light years, the observable universe can seem almost incomprehensibly large, but then you realise that its entire expanse barely even scratches the surface of the total isolated universe beyond the barrier. While we never know for sure, it is very likely that the expanse beyond the cosmic horizon could be hundreds, thousands, or even million times larger than the observable universe. But the question is how? The universe should not be anywhere near this large. In fact, when it was approaching the halfway point of its life so far, we think it may have even started to slow down in its expansion. The current estimated rate of expansion of the universe is about 68 kilometers per second per megaparsec. This is not a sphere expanding uniformly either. This is empty space being elongated in every direction thanks to unknown natural forces. Though the universe is expanding by 68 kilometers a second, this is per megaparsec. A megaparsec is a unit of distance equivalent to about 3.26 million light years. So for every 3.26 million light years further away from us you travel, the faster the universe appears to be expanding. For example, just over 6 million light years from Earth, the universe is expanding at about 204 kilometers per second from our perspective. At intergalactic distances, the speed of recession reaches extremely high velocities, eventually reaching a distance at which it supersedes the speed of light. The laws of special relativity say that nothing can move faster than the speed of light, of course, but special relativity is a local domain. Right now, you can't personally jump onto a spaceship and move faster than light, but when comparing and contrasting intergalactic distances from one another, this restriction becomes a lot less clear-cut.
Yeah.
The metric itself is not ruled out. But that is just the apparent speed of the galaxy's receding. We still haven't covered why space itself is expanding faster than light, or why the universe is so much unimaginably bigger than the expected dimensions. Well, it was through the receding galaxies that this question was asked in 1998, and it prompted the
Look how big this thing is.
research team, of whom 3
Wow.
of them won Nobel Prizes, to research this. They concluded that the universe had experienced the vast majority of its unsolicited growth in the second half of its life. Before this, the universe's expansion was actually believed to be slowing down due to the gravity of large objects from within. Before a stage in the universe's life known as the dark energy-dominated era began about 6 billion years ago. Dark energy is a fascinating concept we know very little about. You've probably heard of the terms dark energy and dark matter used synonymously, but whereas dark matter is a form of matter that could constitute some kind of undiscovered particle, dark energy is a form of unknown energy that exists within the vast, empty swathes of the universe. With the theory of general relativity, the accelerated expansion of the universe can be explained by a positive value within the cosmological constant, an equation proposed by Alfred Einstein to determine the energy density of space. This positive presence can also be described as vacuum energy, or by its better known term of dark energy. Though we never have observed it, we have seen light distorted by the aforementioned phenomenon of gravitational lensing in seemingly empty areas. This suggests that dark energy doesn't seem to interact with normal baryonic matter that we know of, and only seems to be influenced by gravity. Dark energy may not even be a physical presence per se either, and could just be a property of the universe's emptiness, but failing that, it is believed to be highly homogeneous and has a low density. Dark energy is evidenced by the need for an additional type of energy that is not matter or dark matter, given that the universe appears to have expanded more in the latter half of its life. Principally,
Sorry about
something
that.
driving this faster-than-light expansion. Large-scale matter wave patterns also lend credibility to dark energy's existence. But that tells us nothing about why it exists. Why is it pushing space apart? Why is it moving faster than light? Why is it only present in the darkness? We only know mathematical equations that allow us to guess at its nature, but assuming the current models of cosmology are correct, dark energy is estimated to account for as much as 2/3 of the entirety of energy within the observable universe, notwithstanding the rest of it. Now compare that to a 27% share of dark matter and a mere 5% of the matter that we already know and understand. Haunting questions aside, if dark energy is driving the universe's aggressive expansion beyond the speed of light, then how big is it? Not just the observable universe, but the total universe. Well, there are many conflicting theories and ideas, and a range of estimated values out there. One theory actually contradicts the idea of a larger, unobservable universe, stating that the universe may only be about 78 billion light years in diameter. Neil Cornish et al. Released a paper stating that the universe may actually only be 98.5% of the expected range of the cosmic microwave background radiation map, but his tests on the CMB failed to find any evidence of finite boundaries at such a distance. Even then, some people still believe that the observable universe may be the total size or even larger than its entirety. Why do we see galaxies beyond the estimated size? Well, it has been argued that these could well be reflections. If the universe curves on itself, then photons could hypothetically circumnavigate with the gravity at the edge of the universe, and with hundreds of billions of distant galaxies in the observable universe, we'd have no way of ever matching a galaxy to a possible reflection, and no way of ever knowing if we'd found an authentic galaxy. That being said, there are many more lines of proof to contradict these theories than prove them. Other estimates range from between the 156 billion light years to 180 billion, indirectly inferred from the 78 billion figure that was misconstrued as a radius, not a diameter. A more rigorous method of testing would be to measure the positive and negative curvature of what we believe to be the spatially flat universe. This is just what the Sloan Digital Sky Survey and the Planck satellite aim to do, and concluded that, due to the lack of a defined curvature from the survey space, our observable universe may be as little as...
Now we're starting on the
radius
Colosseum part of the Colosseum, you know?
No meaningful curvature was detected, as though a vastly larger area would be required for such...
I'm actually gonna go grab something.
This equates to a staggering 23 trillion light-year radius, around 15 million times more voluminous than our observable universe's entire expanse. What is scary is that this estimate may actually be quite pessimistic. The real size could significantly be bigger than even 23 trillion light years in radius. If we go all the way up the estimates, we come to the infinite universe theory. Given the sheer size difference and mystery surrounding dark energy, some believe that the total unobservable universe may actually be endless. After all, if it is expanding, then what is on the outside that is independent? It's hard to believe that there is simply nothing outside of an arbitrary boundary. And if the Big Bang truly happened everywhere, then why couldn't it be infinite? As numbers climb and estimates grow larger and larger, more and more people are adopting the theory that the universe outside of what we can observe may actually go on forever. Whatever the case, the expansion of the universe is just a mind-bending concept to grasp. The universe is not technically expanding into anything, and technically no space on the exterior is required for the interior to grow. It truly numbs the mind. Space is incredible, and it may just be hiding yet more weird, wonderful, and even physics-defying properties in its darkness. With over 96% of the galaxies we can currently observe having disappeared over the cosmic horizon, the same fate awaits the vast majority in the distant future. Thanks to dark matter and the period after cosmic inflation, all galaxies from our position are bound to either be drawn to us or to cross the cosmic horizon and be lost forever, with no in between.
how cute this little ginger ale is. So tiny.
With the universe's vastness, it's quite anticlimactic.
Oh, yeah, I have to grab the.
Successfully developed via light-speed travel, the furthest we could ever hope to reach would be the distant minor galaxies of the local group. Cosmic inflation was an event that forced the universe from a minuscule size into an expanding gargantuan cosmic chamber that it becomes today. And with it, most matter was flung beyond our reach. Gravity has helped to bring us within our grasp, but the truth is that's it. Everything else escapes our touches and hence will, in time, cross the cosmic horizon and become causally disconnected and become unreachable forever. The local group of our pocket is sacred, and as such, the gravity of all the objects will eventually draw nearby messier objects together into one big super-elliptical galaxy named Andromeda. If humanity was to be able to retain the presence and capabilities to observe the sky for billions of years beyond this point, then eventually we will see the universe expand by a third to about 62 billion light years, leaving another 2 trillion galaxies to observe from afar. But soon after, the photonic relays of the foregone galaxies will begin to be registered all the way into the microwave and radio wave spectrum, disappearing from view. This is similar to what we believe happens at the event horizon of a black hole, and the oncoming curtain of darkness and nothingness enveloping a visible universe of trillions of galaxies from the outside inwards is an unsettling thought, to say the least. Eventually, the entire observable universe will slowly fade from view, eventually leaving only Andromeda, bounding everything within the local group by gravity and excluding everything else. We will be down to our last trillion stars, from our perspective anyway. When our galaxy is left owing completely, then it may become much more accommodating to intelligent life. Most of the early universe hazards that made it such a harsh place will have subsided with the lower density of space. That means that all of the billions of habitable planets left within Andromeda will stand a much better chance of producing intelligent life. But by the time any sort of civilization emerges, there will be no other galaxies or anything besides our own in view. They will never be able to observe distant galaxies and will never be able to learn as much about the universe as we have. Perhaps they will practice the belief of the island universe theory, an early belief where Andromeda when it was first discovered. Space will simply become something that stops at the edge of the galaxy.
Now I build the Colosseum part of the Colosseum.
As one in an expanse of trillions. Even if they managed to speed off into the unknown at light speed, they would never find anything in the darkness. They'll never have the opportunity to see distant stars, galaxies, megaclusters, black holes, quasars. It will all be too late, and they will never know what they missed. As such, it does seem as if we exist at the perfect time to observe, study and comprehend the universe. We have managed to develop a profound understanding that no civilization in the distant future will ever be able to attain. But, for all we theorize about what lies outside the observable universe, the illusion of galactic solitude in the future does make you wonder, what could we have already missed? What could be the other side of the cosmic horizon right now? How much more would we stand to learn if we could see beyond it? It is these mysteries and theories that make discoveries like MACS 0647JD so fascinating. One day, observing distant galaxies will be impossible. All this is to come in a vast, lonely and expansive universe. What is the origin of everything? How did reality become the way that it is? Where did it all come from? These may sound like unanswerable questions, yet us humans actually have tangible answers for them. The universe is unimaginably old and vast, but it hasn't always been this way. If you follow the science and work backwards, you can trace this void back to its earliest moments, back when the universe was smaller than the tip of a needle. Human beings emerged from the elements that were made from the lighter elements which were present at the beginning of time. There's a popular saying that goes something like, "From dust you came, and to dust you will return." There's more than a grain of truth in it. Life is a product of atoms and evolution by natural selection. I guess you could say we are the universe becoming aware of itself, and the story of our origins is written all over the night sky. And now, as we enter an improbable age of unprecedented technical sophistication, we are beginning to understand and retell that story like never before. Our model of the universe is based on Big Bang cosmology, the idea that the universe started at some point in time and has expanded ever since. Big Bang cosmology is the current accepted model of cosmology, but there are others. In this video, however, we will be rolling with Big Bang cosmology, and if we take the mathematical equations that describe our universe and its expansion and follow them back to their 0 point, we come to a time 13.8 billion years ago where there was nothing. The universe was infinitesimally small and dense. Its size was 0, nothing, into the singularity of a black hole.
Pardon.
But then something happened. We don't know what, but something triggered this point to expand rapidly, allowing its interior contents to breathe. As the universe expands, its temperature energy becomes finite and begins to fall, and at lower temperatures, things are able to form. So, in reality, there was probably no explosion at the Big Bang. The universe began as infinite heat and has cooled ever since. The term Big Bang more loosely refers to the very early seconds of this universe when it was inconceivably hot. And thus, the universe of which we are a part today was born. While we believe it came from a point zero, this is not a centre, and the universe does not expand as a sphere would uniformly. During the early expansion of the universe, the metric of space-time itself changed, and so our models are currently insufficient to determine what the universe was actually like in its first moments. We cannot rule out that the universe was not physically small on its creation, and we cannot conclude on a definite shape. The points between unbound objects in all parts of space-time has increased everywhere in unison, and therefore there is no centre. For this reason, it is said that the Big Bang happened everywhere, and not at one initial point. In the universe today, we experience 4 fundamental interactions: gravity, strong nuclear interactions, weak nuclear interactions, and electromagnetism. During the earliest increment of cosmic time, known as the Planck epoch, these 4 fundamental interactions were bundled by the unimaginably extreme conditions of the micro-universe, and were as one, in an overall unified fundamental force.
Yes.
We cannot test, prove or verify that such a godlike force existed, but many scientists agree that it did. It is possible that the laws of physics as we currently experience them may not have applied under these extreme conditions either. The temperatures and energies were so high that subatomic particles wouldn't have been able to form until later, and the universe was a tiny hot mesh. A fraction of a nanosecond later, things started to happen. This unified force began to separate into the individual forces, with the temperature falling as the universe expanded. Think of it like water vapour condensing onto a surface and then freezing. As space cooled, the quantum fields which created the particles and forces we see today were able to settle at lower energy levels, becoming more stable.
Very
This
detailed.
increased stability completely
Very
changed
cool.
how these quantum fields interacted. This caused the single force to break into 2 and continue as separate forces. This phenomenon is known as symmetry breaking. The unified force continued as gravity and
Whoa, new
electrostrong
piece.
interaction. Symmetry breaking occurs at ridiculously high temperatures, and we're
Yeah,
talking
cool.
crazy numbers here. When the temperature fell below 10 to the 28 Kelvin, this electronuclear force then itself broke into 2 separate interactions, strong and electro-weak interactions. But this seemed to have a profound effect on the universe, as after this symmetry breaking occurred, the universe violently expanded in an event we call cosmic inflation. This expansion was incredible. In under a trillionth of a second, the universe had become at least 10 to the 78 times more voluminous. That's the same as 1 nanometer being stretched to over 10 light years in under a second. Now obviously this seems to violate relativity. Nothing should be able to move faster than light speed, especially not that fast. In this case, however, the physical metric governing space-time changed, and so the universe changed not in size, but in scale. The benchmarks themselves were bypassed in this event. Think of it like resizing a picture. There's a good amount of evidence that this cosmic inflation occurred, and we're still observing its effects today. The elongation of space distributed the contents of the universe much more sparsely and relatively uniformly across its vast expanse. The energy of this inflationary field was released at the end of inflation, and it decayed into the first elementary particles, the first tiny building blocks of information in the universe. This field cooled further, and the entire universe was flooded with a dense, hot quark-gluon plasma. It was from this plasma that the first molecules and atoms formed, which is why scientists believe that matter is distributed homogeneously across space. The density of the universe fell dramatically during inflation, causing supercooling. This allowed the temperature to fall below the threshold for a third event of symmetry breaking. At this point, all the elementary particles created by the quantum field gained mass, having been massless at higher
That's
energy
cool.
levels.
It goes like right here.
Electro-weak interactions separated into electromagnetic
Big
and
chunk.
weak interactions, and the four fundamental forces that govern the universe had been established. And now, particles of mass had been formed to be bound by these forces. Within the first picosecond of time after the Big Bang, that's 1/1,000,000,000th of a second, the universe had emerged and was hot, voluminous and dense, but the groundwork was now in place for chemistry to occur. Plasma is the fourth state of matter, after solid, liquid and gas. It occurs when the electrons of an atom become so energetic that they start flying around, intersecting other loose electrons and joining atoms, allowing the plasma to act as one in a big, super hot molten soup. It's the state that stars are in, and is the state of much of the matter in the universe, so much so that many believe we underestimate its role in the universe. This quark-gluon plasma at the end of inflation had no electrons, as electrons couldn't form yet, but all of the elementary particle components were flowing around and acting as one, all over the universe. Among these elementary particles are quarks, leptons and antiparticles. These quarks and leptons are capable of binding together, but during this increment of time in the early universe, known as the quark epoch, it was still too hot and too energetic for binds to stick. But then, a millionth of a second after the Big Bang had occurred,
do it like
the
all over
temperature
again.
energy of the universe fell
This
below
time it's
this
different.
threshold, and now quarks could begin binding without being destroyed. This led to baryogenesis. Bound pairs of two or more quarks began forming, named hadrons. Baryons are a type of hadron that is composed of three quarks, such as protons and neutrons, the subatomic particles in the nucleus of an atom. But as the temperature fell still, there was no longer enough energy to form new hadron and antihadron pairs, and most of these pairs of opposites annihilated each other, creating high-energy
Very
photons in the
grammar or
process.
whatever.
Only a small number of hadrons remained as the hadron epoch drew to a close at 1 second of cosmic time. In 1 single second,
Yeah.
the universe had formed, its laws had been established,
So
and its
I hit 2 hours
particles had been bound.
a minute ago.
For the subatomic particles left, about 1 neutron remained for every 7 protons.
Yeah.
The spherical region of space that would become our present-day observable universe was about 20 light years across at this point, and there's no telling how large the rest of it was. All created in a single second. A neutrino is another kind of subatomic particle, and it's not the same as a neutron. While both are neutral in charge, a neutron is a large subatomic particle composed of quarks, whereas neutrinos are a kind of particle with a mass close to zero that do not interact much with ordinary matter, and so they are relativistic, meaning they travel at near light speed across space. Approximately 1 second after the Big Bang, these neutrinos that had formed from the plasma decoupled when they ceased to interact with the quark structures of the plasma. Because these neutrinos were not affected by matter from here henceforth, they are still flying around in the universe today, but they have a very low rate of energy, approximately 10 billion times less than we are able to detect with current technology. As such, while we have strong evidence to suggest that these neutrinos created what is referred to as the cosmic neutrino background of the universe, we probably won't be able to detect this evidence of decoupling for a very long time, if at all. At this point, radiation dominates the behavior of the cosmos. Tiny random fluctuations in energy and continuity during cosmic inflation have now led to some areas of matter being denser than others, and so some hypothesize that even this early on, only a second after the creation of the universe, some areas might have been dense enough to experience a gravitational collapse capable of forming a singularity. the universe may have seen its first primordial black holes. These are black holes which are not formed by stars, so therefore don't have to be as massive. In fact, the late astrophysicist Stephen Hawking predicted that these black holes could weigh as little as a billionth of a gram. We don't know how large they could have become, but recently ongoing efforts to find gravitational waves have detected black holes which we think could be primordial in origin. Primordial black holes are good candidates for the seeds of supermassive engine black holes at the centres of old, large galaxies. As they couldn't have formed from normal matter this early on, they are also plausible candidates for dark matter, another area of the Standard Model with questions surrounding it. In the 9 seconds that followed these early black holes, the plasma was now composed of mostly leptons after the pairs of hadrons had destroyed each other. Leptons are another kind of elementary particle which bind together the same as quarks, but form other varieties of subatomic particles, such as electrons and more neutrinos. The course of the lepton epoch mirrors that of the hadron epoch. The temperature falls below the point at which new lepton pairs can be formed, and most of the pairs annihilate each other, giving rise to more high-energy photons and leaving only a few leptons behind. Now the universe has protons, neutrons and electrons, the 3 parts of an atom. Between 2 and 20 minutes after the Big Bang, the temperature and pressure of the universe allowed nuclear fusion to occur, and its products to remain stable. The protons and neutrons could now latch onto each other to become the first atomic nuclei. Around a quarter of these protons and 100% of the neutrons fused into elements. Initially it was deuterium, one of 2 hydrogen isotopes, which fused into helium-4, and at 3 minutes of cosmic time these light elements were stable. The problem is, fusion is a complicated and difficult process, and it can take thousands of years to begin forging heavier elements in a nuclear furnace, so no heavy elements were able to form during this 18-minute window. When this process, known as nucleosynthesis, ended, the resulting matter of the universe was composed of about 3/4 hydrogen nuclei, 25% helium nuclei, and less than 1/1000% of lithium nuclei. And with this process complete, the universe pauses for breath. Everything that has happened so far has done so in a period of about 20 minutes, but now everything that can happen straight away from the defrosting of the universe has happened. Photons continue to dominate the universe's behaviour for about 50,000 years, and as the universe continued to expand, the hydrogen and helium elements were now fairly evenly distributed across all areas of space, gradually being attracted to one another by gravity. At about 47,000 years of cosmic time, the universe has expanded so much that the density of photons is now lower than the density of matter, and the universe's large-scale behaviour begins to be dominated by matter instead of radiation. This matter is composed of about 15% baryonic matter and an estimated 85% cold dark matter. The reason we haven't touched upon dark matter so far is because, while there is strong evidence that dark matter exists, we still do not understand its nature, and thus we're not sure what role it played in the events of the early universe. However, from the point of matter domination onward, this dark matter helped to accelerate cosmic structure formation by adding mass. Dark matter groups and gathers into huge filaments across space the same way baryonic matter would, but because dark matter does not interact with light, it groups faster than normal matter because it is not slowed down by radiation pressure. So these dark matter filaments formed quickly across space, laying the blueprints for the first galactic megastructures billions of years later. The reason we don't see any evidence of these dark matter structures is because they're invisible and undetectable for present-day technology at least. Because dark matter doesn't interact with light at all, it doesn't lose energy as it travels. However, when normal matter loses energy, it loses energy that would otherwise keep it apart from other matter, and so structures of ordinary matter can collapse into denser concentrations. Where dark matter doesn't lose this energy, it prevents gravitationally bound dark matter from collapsing beyond a certain density. So while the early universe was filled with these massive dark matter filaments, they would have been diffuse. The ordinary matter of the universe was then dragged towards these dark matter filaments, causing it to come together and form things faster along these arms. Fast forward another 50,000 years, and the universe is celebrating its 100,000th birthday, and it has now cooled enough that the atomic nuclei that have grouped along the filaments in huge colonies can now begin to bind together and remain stable. The first molecule forms. This molecule is helium hydride, one helium atom bound to one hydrogen atom with one electron removed. This composite structure of atoms played a key role in the eventual formation of stars. There won't be any for hundreds of millions of years yet, but gravity is pulling this matter together silently as the universe expands, and it does so for another 270,000 years. So far, the matter in the universe has been at a high enough temperature that it formed an ionized plasma. Ionization occurs when an electron is removed from a neutral atom, giving it an overall electrical charge. Light photons are absorbed by charged particles, and so they cannot travel long distances through plasma. This would have given the universe an opaque appearance, kind of like a thick fog which you could barely see through. But once the universe was 377,000 years old, it cooled to the point that these free electrons could now rejoin these atomic nuclei of protons and neutrons. This event was called recombination. Because this process is more efficient with energy, most hydrogen atoms joined with high energy electrons, which release light as they join the nuclei. By the end of recombination, most of the atoms formed were neutral, and thus didn't interact with light. This meant that the universe was no longer a soup, and the photons released during the event could now travel freely and indefinitely across space. Before this, the universe would have appeared as a soft, opaque orange colour, but then, recombination meant that the universe became transparent to visible light. And so, those final photons emitted are still firing across the universe today. Initially, they had a temperature energy of about 4,000 Kelvin, but over billions of years, the universe has expanded and the wavelengths of these photons has been elongated. This process turns visible light red, and as such we call it redshift. This has occurred for so long, however, that these photons' wavelengths are now much longer and their frequencies are much lower, at a temperature energy of about 2.7 Kelvin, and so they shifted out of the visible spectrum and into the infrared spectrum, and then into the microwave spectrum. The photons released during recombination are the oldest light in the universe that we can still detect today, but you can't see microwaves. Instead, you have to listen for
Are you
them.
sure about that?
No matter where you point your radio telescope in the night sky, you will hear a consistent microwave band static, and if we map it, we get this: the cosmic microwave background. You've probably seen a picture of the CMB before. It is one of science's most iconic discoveries, even though it was discovered by accident when researchers at Bell Telephone Laboratories picked up static coming from all points of the sky as they attempted to construct a radio receiver. What they actually discovered was, in layman's terms, the afterglow of the Big Bang. So this noise is the nearly 13.8 billion year old remnants of recombination. The difference in colour on our maps represents tiny fluctuations in temperature caused by ripples during cosmic inflation. But overall, the universe appears isotropic and homogeneous. And with that, the universe ceased to be an opaque orange oven of plasma, and as the CMB photons faded over millions of years, the universe became the dark expanse we are more used to today. Light could now travel freely across space, but there were no light-emitting sources. The universe had entered its dark age. The photons of the CMB took approximately 3 million years to fade into the infrared spectrum, by which time the universe had cooled from some 4,000 Kelvin down to 60 Kelvin. From that point onwards, space was pitch black. The universe experienced total darkness for the first time. Gradually, gas clouds of hydrogen and helium molecules began to group together over the next few 100 million years, enough time for sufficiently massive clouds to condense and experience a gravitational collapse. As the density of these clouds rose, so too did their temperatures, and eventually a familiar process played out for the first time. The first stars began illuminating the universe. These were the first coherent structures to form in the universe, giant spherical fusion engines in plasma state, essentially a giant explosion held together by its own gravity. We've yet to observe these infant stars because those oldest galaxies where we might be able to find them are just too far away. But scientists believe that these stars emerged 300 million years after the Big Bang, and they are known as population 3 stars. Stars with very few metals and short lifespans of merely a few million years, which took the initial hydrogen and helium of the early universe and started making it into heavier elements, like lithium, oxygen and carbon. And thus began the Stelliferous era, the ongoing age of new star formation throughout the universe. These elementary stars could have been tiny or massive. The larger stars were unstable and had short lifespans, causing them to explode in the first supernovae, which bedazzled the dark universe and deposited heavier elements into the clouds of Earth. More complex stars could now form from these richer clouds, stars with longer lifespans. For those well suited enough to survive in the long term, they would have been attracted to one another over millions of years into small clusters and then larger groups of hundreds and then thousands and then millions. These communities of stars began congregating along the dark matter filaments, whose massive structure formation was accelerated. And while the exact timing of the first galaxy is up for debate, we believe it to be sometime between 380 and 400 million years after the Big Bang. At this point, we no longer have to conduct experiments to recreate this era of the young universe. Instead, we can observe it directly. GNZ11 is the current oldest and most distant galaxy we've ever observed. It formed at this early stage of structure formation, and so what you are currently looking at right now happened about 13.5 billion years ago. GNZ11 suggests that stellar formation and galaxy formation was surprisingly fast. The earliest galaxies were dwarf galaxies, large, fairly scattered colonies of stars. But by 800 million years of cosmic time they were merging, with their cores combining, creating spiral galaxies bound by central supermassive black holes. And within these active galactic centers, the first quasars lit up the universe, with their light radiating billions of light years across space, so much so that we are still picking them up today. The light we've detected from the most distant quasars indicates the presence of elements such as carbon and iron, further evidence of fast, early star formation and destruction. Around these black holes, in the halos of their galaxies, a new population of stars formed, population 2 stars, low metal stars which burn brighter and illuminate the cores of their galaxies. Eventually, every corner of the universe knew light, and at 1 billion years of cosmic time, the Dark Ages had officially come to an end. The universe had reached an age of maturity, and it has appeared much the same ever since. The galaxies within became gravitationally bound over the next few billion years, and they clustered together in large structures, covering unimaginable distances along the dark matter-laid web that marks the present-day cosmic web, the 3D path across our universe. Between the dense arms of the cosmic web, the first voids appeared, some of them millions of light years across. The diameters of coherent, gravitationally bound galactic structures grew to hundreds of millions of light years, and the present-day structure
I did it right. I put it on back properly.
Among the galactic superclusters, one exists named the Laniakea supercluster. Around 8 billion years ago, a galaxy formed within the bounds of this structure called the Milky Way, a galaxy that hosts a particular G-type main sequence dwarf star, and at just the right distance from this star, a planet formed, which would become covered in water, and would eventually give rise to the most mysterious phenomenon of them all, life. It's amazing to think about how much of this universe we actually know. Not bad for walking, talking molecular systems down to a chunk of rock orbiting a continuous explosion. But what's even more impactful and somewhat unsettling to think about is how much we still don't know. We know so much about how, yet nothing about why. Perhaps if we knew more about why the universe began, we would be able to understand where we are headed. The cosmos is currently a vast, stable place in which life can emerge, but it hasn't always been this way, and like all things, it can't last.
To be continued. That's the second one. Let's watch this one.
$13.8 billion years ago, the universe was born, and within a second of its existence, there was gravity, particles, mass, and space. Today, it is incomparably larger and more voluminous as superclusters of galaxies line the dark matter-laid filaments across distances so vast that even the fastest thing within that space takes millions of years to travel meaningful distances. As we learn more about how we think the universe began, we are beginning to look towards the end. How will it become devoid of life, stars, galaxies, or even cease to exist entirely? No one could say for sure what the ultimate fate of the universe will be, but with advancements in technology, we are beginning to better understand the metrics and energies that will be instrumental in the end of everything, and the likely possibilities are as unsettling as they are fascinating.
In order to predict the distant future of the universe, we must consider three things: the expansion of space-time, the motions of galaxies around us, and lastly, the cause of these behaviours. The first thing to consider is the way that the universe around us is actually expanding. It's easy to think of the universe as this magnificent cosmic crystal ball, expanding outwards at the speed of light, but this is far from the truth. When space expands, new space is created everywhere equally. All points in space-time expand at the same rate, from the space between you and your computer to the farthest reaches of the oldest galaxies. The more space expands, the more space there is that can expand, and so the process accelerates with time. Think of it like a balloon inflating, but we are on the outside, not the inside. No matter where we stand on the surface area always increases at the same rate, and as such, the
That's pretty good. What else can I do there?
center is everywhere. This expansion is very weak, and so gravity can hold objects that are gravitationally bound together, like you, me, Earth, the rest of the galaxy, and our local galactic group. However, at intergalactic distances beyond the local group, objects are receding away from us, and we see evidence of this through redshift, the process of the universe's expansion elongating visible light, turning it red. This recession means that the larger the present-day universe becomes, the larger the distances become between us and other pockets of the universe. The expansion rate is currently estimated to be about 68 kilometers per second per megaparsec. This means that right here, space is expanding in all directions at that rate, but the further out you go, the faster objects are being pushed away from us. A megaparsec is a unit of measurement equivalent to about 3.3 million light years, so at about 6 megaparsecs, or just under 20 million light years away, the space between us and those galaxies is growing at a rate of over 400 kilometers per second. The intergalactic distances between us and galaxies like Messier 87, IT 1101 and GNZ 11 is growing all the time. This also means that, at a sufficiently distant point, galaxies will be moving away from us faster than light speed. This doesn't break any laws of physics, as they themselves are not moving that fast, but the distance between us and them is growing more than light can travel in the same increment of time. This means that there is a point relative to us beyond which light will never reach us, the cosmic event horizon, the boundary that separates our observable universe from the rest of the universe, which we will never be able to see or detect. Once galaxies cross this point, they become causally disconnected, and whatever little hope there may have been of transportation, communication, and eventually even observation of any kind will be gone. These galaxies will be lost, and we will never see them again. And the worst part? Over 95% of the galaxies in the observable universe have already crossed this point of no return for travel and communication for us, all because of the aggressive nature of the universe's expansion. But what is causing this kind of expansion? Well, we don't know the underlying mechanisms behind it, but we call it dark energy. Don't let this name fool you. Dark energy is simply our term for the giant IOU to future scientists that we currently attribute to the accelerated expansion of the universe. We don't know how or why it works, but leading theories have suggested everything from a naturally occurring byproduct of space, to a new type of energy field, to random fluctuations at the lowest level of interaction. What we do know, however, is that it is responsible for the accelerating expansion of the universe. Normal matter and energy cannot make the universe behave in this way, and as the density of matter falls, the density of dark energy appears to remain consistent, because more of it pops into existence with the increasing volume of space. Light travels along this ever-expanding space, and its wavelengths become increasingly redshifted, and this is exactly how we discovered dark energy, when in 1998 the High Z supernova search team analysed distant supernovae and discovered that the universe was not only expanding, but it appeared to be getting faster. It appeared to have expanded more in the latter half of its life. When dark energy took over, the universe entered a new era, the dark energy dominated era, marking the point at which matter domination ended, around 9.8 billion years after the Big Bang, a day which would prove to be a tipping point for the universe. With these three things considered, we can start to get a better idea of how the next few trillion years will play out. In several billion years, the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies will collide and merge, and eventually dozens of smaller dwarf galaxies in the local group will also be drawn to this new giant starburst galaxy with the unpopular name Milkdromeda. Everything else beyond our local group pocket was flung beyond our reach in the earliest nanoseconds of time, and so gravity cannot counteract it as it recedes away from us. As the amount of dark energy continues to elongate and expand the universe, even the nearest galaxies to us will cross the cosmic horizon, and within 150 billion years, everything beyond our local supercluster will be invisible and undetectable. This curtain of darkness will continue to swallow everything beyond the boundaries of our galaxy, and eventually it will become impossible to tell that anything exists beyond the edges of Andromeda. Nothing intelligent that emerges in this post-intergalactic era will ever be able to know what lies beyond the apparent end of their galaxy, and this will be the same right across the universe. Furthermore, this expansion and recession of the observable universe has as many practical problems as it does existential nightmares. With all galaxies flung beyond the reach of each other, new galaxies will not be able to form, and the current galaxies of the universe will start to die out. New stars will be unable to form as well, and the existing ones will either collapse to white dwarfs or go supernova. Gradually, the great fires of the universe will be extinguished, one by one, as the galaxies they formed in become unbound. And then, 100 trillion years in the future, the final long-living red and white dwarfs will burn out the last of their fuel and fade into black dwarfs, and the universe will know its second dark age. Only this dark age will likely last for an eternity, and before long, one of the universe's primordial signatures will be the last thing to go out. The photons of the CMB will fade further and eventually become undetectable. The afterglow of the Big Bang will glow no more. Even at this point, the universe can still be considered young. Only the supermassive black holes of the universe, seeded perhaps by the primordial black holes which emerged when the universe was only 1 second old, will survive. And at 10 to the power of 40 years, they will have consumed the last of the matter, and will single-handedly dominate the dark, cold universe. This reign will last an unbelievably long time, but it is not eternal. These black holes will eventually evaporate due to Hawking radiation. And perhaps as far as 10 to the power of 100 years in the future, these black holes will finally fizzle out of existence, and the universe will be a dark, cold, sparse void, trillions upon trillions of megaparsecs in diameter. It will then be powerless to its ultimate fate. Exactly what that will be? Well, scientists have narrowed it down to 4 possible options. What caused the Big Bang? It seems a bit unbelievable that something, especially something like the universe, came from nothing. What makes more sense, or more sense to us at least, is that something came before. And as general relativity developed in the 1900s, a somewhat optimistic hypothesis for the fate of the universe was described. The universe is full of matter whose properties are determined by mass, and whose interactions are dominated by gravity. More mass means more gravity, which will pull everything together. Currently, we believe that the density of dark energy will remain constant as matter's density falls. But if there's more matter than we currently predict, or less dark energy, then eventually this will cause the universe's expansion to slow down and ultimately stop, and it will then begin contracting as the gravity of the objects within pulls it back in on itself. If this theory is correct, then within a few trillion years, causally disconnected galaxies would be flung back within our reach, causing galaxy mergers all over the place, resulting in the births of millions of new galaxies, instead of them all dying out in secluded pockets. However, this contraction is unsustainable, because as the volume of the universe shrinks, the density and temperature within rises. Eventually, stars and planets will be fried from the outside as the universe is transformed, and even atoms will break apart into unbound elementary particles. In fact, all that will be able to survive are the black holes of the universe, and these will gradually merge into larger and larger black holes as they are brought within range of each other by the ever-shrinking universe. In the final moments of cosmic time, these black holes will unite and merge into one gigantic, ultramassive black hole trillions of times more massive than anything we can currently observe, and it will contain the entire universe's information. Finally, this black hole will consume all of space-time, devouring itself in the process, and return the universe to that which it came from, an infinitesimally small and dense singularity. Some people even take this a step further and suppose that we live in an oscillatory universe, and that the contraction
agree.
back into a singularity will ultimately trigger a similar chain of events to those of the Big Bang, and a new universe would emerge and rapidly expand, forming new space with similar attributes in a cyclical fashion. Some believe that this has been happening forever and will continue to happen ad infinitum. Crazy shit, right? During the 1900s, the Big Crunch and Big Bounce were front-running theories, and we're even making puzzling discoveries indicating some sort of past universe to support this. Only 6 months ago, as of the making of this video, did the BICEP 2 radio telescope of the BICEP and Keck array pick up what has been described as apparent evidence for Hawking points, the remnants of supermassive black holes which evaporated in a previous universe, but whose imprints carried over into the next one. These points represent anomalous areas of the cosmic microwave background which appear to be sources of vast amounts of energy. And so, while models which rely on the universe contracting have been challenged by recent dark energy theories, the question of whether the universe is oscillatory is still very much up for debate. In 1998, we discovered that the universe was not only expanding, but that its expansion was accelerating, and as such the Big Crunch now has some major doubts over it, as it is believed that gravity will not be able to counteract the endless expansion by dark energy. We still don't understand how dark energy works, but what we do know is that it is almost certainly bad news. And there's another pretty big problem. We know the universe began as unimaginable heat and energy, and it's cooled ever since. Down below the different thresholds for symmetry breaking, nucleosynthesis and chemistry to occur, and it's still cooling today. But with a little help from dark energy, it is on course to meet an irreversible temperature minimum, the end of all heat in the universe, also known as the heat death or Big Freeze. As the name suggests, it refers to the end of all differences in heat in the universe. Heat is a product of energy. Matter in the universe needs some kind of energy, either directly or indirectly, for things to happen, and every process that performs work and uses energy gives off waste heat. These processes proceed in a way which reduces the availability of the remaining energy during the energy transfer. Energy flows from a concentrated form which can be used to a dispersed form which is useless. If new energy cannot be created, then the share of the universe's energy which is wasted, aka its entropy, will continue to increase. In the far future, after the final black holes have evaporated, all energy in the universe will be in this dispersed state. Entropy will be at maximum, and there won't be any temperature energy gradient to allow information processing. Simply put, nothing will ever be able to happen again. Matter will gradually break apart into radiation over a long time, and the entire universe will consist of a light cloud of photons, and even this will decay with time. It's like ice melting into a glass of water, the loss of all gradient. The Big Freeze will bring the universe to just a fraction of a degree above absolute zero, at which point it will be a homogeneous sparse skeleton. Dark energy will expand this dead, unrecognizable universe to indescribable sizes, and then perhaps it will just linger there for an eternity. Perhaps there exist ancient universes which have already undergone heat deaths. Perhaps dark energy will curse the universe so that its second dark age lasts forever, or perhaps it will destroy it entirely. We are just becoming aware of dark energy's role in the fate of the universe, but there's still a long way to go. The discovery of accelerating expansion of the universe is not a good thing, but the real situation could be even worse. We currently think that dark energy remains constant throughout
I'm gonna
space,
finish
but
this
another
bag and I'll be
possibility
done
is
for
that it
today.
works inversely to the normal energy field. and its density
I thought this was gonna take me like 4 days,
increasing.
but
The current
gonna be a lot
density of
more.
dark energy is very low, but
Maybe
if
a
this
week.
increases over time, then there's
Yeah.
going to come a day where it becomes denser than the structures of the cosmos, such as stars, galaxies, and planets.
might do some
In
off
this
stream as well.
scenario, gravity will no longer be able to hold the structure together, and the object will be torn apart, right down to its atoms. This means that at some point in the future, dark energy will exceed a density at which galaxies start becoming unbound and unstable. Before long, the planetary systems of these stars will become scattered, and then the density of dark energy would exceed that of planets, and every star, planet and moon is pulled apart down to an atomic level, and then down to unbound elementary particles. And the expanding universe would be so voluminous that no elementary particle would ever encounter another one. the universe would be completely ripped down to its finest pixels, and some speculate that even space-time itself would tear and would cease to exist. Dark energy is not our friend. Be it the big freeze or the big rip, it means that the universe is unsustainable to life, heat, and maybe even its own existence. So far, we've only focused on the fate of the universe occurring everywhere, but it's possible that somewhere, a random anomaly has caused a chain of events to take place right now which is erasing the universe like a cancer as opposed to a delete button. This is all thanks to a theoretical chain reaction called vacuum decay. Everything in the universe wants to reach its vacuum state, aka a steady state with as little energy as possible. The same principle applies to the quantum fields which govern our universe, the same fields which determine the laws for particle interaction. They want to reach their vacuum state too. As far as we know, all of these fields reached their vacuum state in the universe long ago, apart from one, the Higgs field, which happens to be the field that gives particles their mass. In 2012, scientists at CERN used the Large Hadron Collider to identify what we think might be the long-sought Higgs boson, but when we estimated its mass, we discovered something unsettling. The Higgs field appears stable when it actually isn't. It may be in a state of false vacuum. It appears stable because it is at a local minimum of energy, but it still has hidden potential energy left to give, which puts it in a highly precarious state. Think of it like standing on the edge of a cliff. The universe may have to be in this knife-edge state for stuff to happen, like the formations of stars and galaxies, but it also means that this balance could be, and inevitably will be, disturbed, with disastrous consequences for its surroundings. If a quantum effect, such as quantum tunneling, led to a disturbance in the balance of the Higgs field and a lower energy state is possible, then this hidden potential energy will be released as the area reaches a less energetic state, and the resulting effect on space-time is like throwing a match into a lake filled with petrol. This point of disturbance would create a brand new universe within ours, a so-called true vacuum. This spherical vacuum would expand outwards at the speed of light as it releases this huge amount of potential energy, completely destroying everything it engulfs and leaving everything within its bounds shredded down to its elementary particles. Within this new vacuum universe, the laws of physics would be overwritten, completely changing the properties of elementary particles and the way they interact. Chemistry and information
I'm just like really tired. I'm back. Yeah.
Processing would be impossible. No atoms or molecules can form in such an environment. The scary thing about these theoretical bubbles is that they could be anywhere and could start at any time. There may be bubbles of true vacuum out there right now which are devouring their surroundings but are too distant to ever bother us. Even if one did engulf us, we'd never see it coming. They expand at almost light speed and there's no stopping them either way. Everything would just be erased and unbound down to elementary particles in a kind of cosmic Thanos snap. There's no telling how much of the universe, if any, is in true vacuum state, but if the share is high enough, then the majority of the universe will have undergone this big change into a true vacuum state. This may have a profound effect on the way dark energy expands space-time, maybe even inducing the opposite effect. Dark energy would begin pulling the vacuum universe back in on itself, which may ultimately lead this event to some variation of the Big Crunch hypothesis. It's unlikely, but these vacuum bubbles are possible, and perhaps even statistically likely to be occurring somewhere in the vast expanse of space. Luckily, however, because most of the space in the universe is causally disconnected from us, as long as a bubble never begins inside the local group, we will never be affected by other true vacuums. One of the few advantages of being confined into this dark, lonely pocket of the ever-expanding universe. The big crunch, the big freeze, the big rip, the big change. These are the four ways in which our universe could meet its destiny. In reality, the heat death will likely be the winner. The big crunch has been all but ruled out in its current form due to the discovery of dark energy, but perhaps some variant of the process will give the universe a second chance to see another age, or even a new universe entirely. Our quest to know the truth comes from our desire to find our place in all of it. Will life exist after the universe? Does it already exist beyond it? These are the questions that we want to know, but humanity has far more pressing concerns to address before the heat death. In little over 6,000 years, we've learned a staggering amount about the nature of our universe and our existence. Imagine what we could uncover and learn if we gave ourselves a better chance of long-term survival as a species. If the human race prevails for thousands or even millions of years, we might be able to observe the mechanisms that will determine our universe's ultimate fate with our own eyes, rather than relying solely on our predictions and equations. Until that time, however, we know everything will come to an end, so we may as well just enjoy the ride. What is the origin of everything? How did reality become the way that it is? Where did it all come from? Stars are among the most fascinating things in the universe. They are the givers of warmth, light and energy, and are the nuclear engines behind some of the most extreme phenomena. They form from gas clouds and carve out entire planetary systems, releasing heavier elements in the process, which allow more stars to form. But the most fascinating thing about stars is what awaits them when they die. When a star reaches the end of its life, most of the time it does so in incredible fashion, with a blinding, cataclysmic supernova explosion. But that is rarely the end. We know that particularly massive stars, many thousands of times larger than our sun, can collapse in on themselves so much that they form black holes. But a dead star doesn't always have to form a black hole to be a destructive gravitational influence. Some stars collapse down to a fraction of the size they once were, into a ball of tortured matter so dense and compressed that the effects are out of this world, quite literally. These dense graveyard star cores are known as neutron stars, and their types, properties and statistics are all absolutely mind-numbing. In order to understand what a neutron star is, you must first understand what a neutron is. Everything in the universe, besides energy, is composed of atoms, the tiny fundamental building blocks of creation. And they themselves are made up of tiny components called subatomic particles, which come in three varieties. Protons, which have a positive electrical charge, electrons, which have a negative electrical charge, and finally neutrons, subatomic particles with no net electrical charge. Protons and neutrons make up the nucleus of an atom, and the number of each is the same in most elements. So with that in mind, how does it relate to dead stars? Well, a neutron star is formed when a massive star, between 10 times and 29 times the mass of our Sun, reaches the end of its life and explodes. At this point, heavier elements in the core begin fusing iron. Because iron has no energy to give, fusion is no longer generating outward pressure from within the star, and there is suddenly nothing to stop the star collapsing under the weight of its own gravity. The outer layers collapse inwards rapidly, with nothing to counter them, and when they reach the iron core, this matter forces the interior into a much smaller space, before essentially bouncing off the core and exploding in a violent supernova explosion. These outer layers collapse fast, at 25% the speed of light in fact. This is so fast that particularly massive stars keep on collapsing indefinitely into a singularity, creating a black hole. A neutron star is formed by the level of massive star below, star cores that are less than about 4 to 5 times the mass of the Sun. In this case, the core is not massive enough to collapse indefinitely, but what remains of the collapsed matter is minuscule in size compared to its previous form. A star once hundreds of times larger than the Sun collapses into an object the size of a city, making it among the densest objects in the universe. The reason they are called neutron stars is because the density and pressure on the interior is so great that the protons and electrons of the atoms within start to be crushed into one another, generating long chains of strong neutron-rich material under conditions similar to those of the nucleus of an atom. Neutron stars are essentially giant atomic nuclei. These dense, dead stars have extremely strong gravitational influences and magnetic fields. The chain reaction from the supernova explosion often causes the newly formed neutron star to spin incredibly quickly, with some known to rotate up to 40,000 times per minute, a speed which begins to deteriorate over time. It wasn't until the 1960s that we were able to confirm the existence of these complex objects, but scientists have been speculating on them for some 30 years or so, the time leading up to their discovery. In December 1933, just 2 years after the discovery of the neutron, astrophysicists Walter Baade and Fritz Vicky proposed that supernova explosions could cause stars to turn into much denser and more closely packed bodies as a result of the explosion. A plausible theory, but at the time we were sure we'd never be able to detect such an object even if they did exist, as they would simply be too small to be observed from the Earth. But moving into the 1960s, astronomer if stars generated strong magnetic fields, then the electromagnetic radiation this would emit should be detectable from the Earth. And sure enough, in 1965, astronomers Anthony Hewitt and Samuel Okoye discovered a source of radio brightness in the nearby Crab Nebula. This anomaly turned out to be the product of a rapidly rotating neutron star, and so we were able to conclude on the existence of these terrifying post-production stars. And then, in 1997, we did in fact see a neutron star through visible light. What you see here is an actual photograph of a neutron star of a similar mass to our Sun, which was discovered in 1992. The achievement of observing a neutron star 400 light years away in visible light is not to be understated. Whereas stars are millions of kilometers
for 8 more minutes.
radiate light, most neutron stars are merely about 20 kilometers in diameter, or just 12 miles. One of the largest we've discovered to date is PSR J0348, a neutron star in the constellation of Taurus with an estimated mass of about twice that of our Sun, packed into an object just 25 kilometers wide, making it smaller than the inner ring roads of the City of London, but huge for a neutron star. Although saying that, size doesn't actually correlate to more mass within neutron stars. In fact, more massive neutron stars are actually smaller, as their mass compacts more densely than in lighter neutron stars. Regardless of how big or small they are, this size-mass ratio gives them their incredible densities, so much so that a single teaspoon of neutron star matter would weigh hundreds of millions of tons here on Earth. This incredibly compact concentration of mass means that the gravity of a neutron star is around 2 billion times greater than on the Earth. And while not as dense as black holes, this gravity is still enough to bend and warp the radiation and light being emitted around it, causing a gravitational lensing effect. In fact, sticking with our teaspoon of neutron star material, if you were able to drop it to the ground from shoulder height, the spoon would be travelling at well over 20,000 kilometers per hour before it collided with the ground. Our ideas on the nature of these stars is based on models, but it is possible to infer some details of a neutron star's structure by studying living stars, such as the Sun. This process is known as astroseismology, and it can reveal the inner structure of neutron stars by analysing the spectra of star oscillations. This is what gives us our insight into the real jaw-dropping numbers associated with these cocoons. The surface, or crust of the neutron star, is an extremely hard outer layer, whose surface temperature can reach up to 1 million degrees Kelvin. This crust gives the neutron star a miniature landscape. It can have mountains, but these mountains can only ever hope to reach a few millimeters high. The extreme outer layer is made mostly of iron left over from the supernova, and this iron is so compressed that it keeps the internal components sealed below the crust under unthinkable pressure. Under these conditions, atomic nuclei are crushed together in long strings of matter, trivially named nuclear pasta. Barely anything can breach this material. It is among the strongest and most tightly packed matter in the universe. As we move downwards towards the core, we start to become a bit less sure. We aren't sure what effect this much pressure this deep into the core would have on matter. However, we do know that it is able to keep atomic nuclei from decaying, allowing it to remain stable. This internal mass, density and pressure keeps any atmosphere...
I'm gonna end the stream now. Bye.